Hello friends, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How's your day going? Drop a comment below. And by the way, thank you so much for supporting the channel and sharing so many of your mysterious experiences with us. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, let's jump into today's spooky stories. Okay, so I need to start by telling you, this isn't one of those creaky floorboards and an overactive imagination stories. This was real life for my family. Real enough that even now, when I picture that house, my chest tightens a little. My mom grew up in this old place right on the edge of the Ohio River. Not near it, on it. Like the house was constantly leaning toward the water, as if it was listening to something down below. It was over 100 years old, and it had that heavy, sunken-in feeling old houses get. Like they're full of memories they don't want to share. Later on, someone told the family it had been built on land that used to be a burial site. Native land. Sacred land. And I know people can roll their eyes at that kind of detail, but it matters in this story, because the whole house felt like it knew it didn't belong there. My granddad, everyone called him Pop, was the kind of man who could fix anything with his hands and didn't believe in anything he couldn't measure. Ghosts were nonsense. Bad dreams. Drafts. Settling wood. That was always his answer. But the house didn't care what he believed. The first thing my mom remembers, she was about 8. She was in her bedroom, playing quietly. Nothing spooky, just being a kid. She had this big stuffed bear sitting in the corner, like a lot of kids do. And without anyone touching it, the bear's head slowly turned toward her. Not a little wobble, not falling over. Turned, deliberate. Then, it tilted like it was studying her. She screamed so hard she felt it in her throat, and she ran downstairs like the floor was on fire. And nobody could explain it, so the explanation became, it didn't happen. Except, it kept happening. By the time she was 12, the house had patterns, like it had routines. She and her sisters would be brushing their hair at night, normal, sleepy little kid stuff, and they'd see a man appear in the mirror behind them. Not a reflection trick. Not maybe. A man where no man should be, standing too close, like he'd been waiting. And then there were the sounds. Almost every night, downstairs, they'd hear what sounded like a party upstairs. Footsteps, laughter, the clink of something that could have been glasses. Then, out of nowhere, a gunshot. A woman screaming. And then, the unmistakable, sickening sound of someone tumbling down the wooden stairs. Thump after thump after thump. Here's the part that still makes my skin prickle. If you were sleeping upstairs, you didn't hear any of it. Like whatever was happening was meant for the people downstairs. Like it was being performed. My grandma, let's call her Lena, wasn't dramatic. She was tired, hardworking, practical. But one night she woke up and saw a man standing at the foot of the bed. He was wearing a brown robe, the kind of thing you'd picture on someone from another century. And he wasn't fuzzy or see-through or misty. He looked solid. He smiled at her, slow and wrong, then held his hands out slightly, almost like he was presenting himself. And then he backed out of the room and vanished. Just gone. And my granddad, Pop, still insisted the house was fine. The worst thing, the thing that my mom still won't talk about for long, happened when she was around 14. She woke up late at night and went downstairs for water. The house was dark in that thick way, where darkness feels like a weight. And as she passed the back door, she saw a light through the window. A green glow. Not porch light yellow, not moonlight. Green, like a flame that shouldn't exist. Then it turned its head toward her, and it smiled. Not a friendly smile, not curiosity. A smile like it was pleased she'd finally noticed it. She couldn't move. She said it felt like time stretched out and pinned her in place, and when she finally found her voice and screamed, that thing lunged, ran straight toward the house. My grandparents came running, and my mom bolted into them, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. To this day, if you ask her what she saw, she'll tell you, flat out, that she looked into the devil's face. Now, my granddad was a long-haul truck driver, so he was gone a lot, and I think that's part of why he stayed stubborn about it. He wasn't there for the worst of it, not like the women were. They lived with it daily. The dread wasn't occasional, it was part of the house. Eventually, Grandma Lena moved out. She just couldn't do it anymore. But Pop stayed because he refused to be chased out of his own home. That was who he was, sweet, loyal, and so stubborn it was almost unbelievable. Years later, my mom and her sisters had kids, us. And here's what's wild. Nobody sat us down and said, "Hey, by the way, that house is haunted." They'd just say things like, "We love that place," and then pause, like they were swallowing the rest of the sentence. Or, "Stuff happened there," like it was a weather report. But we went all the time because we adored Pop. He was our safe person, and even though the house was creepy, it pulled at us, like it didn't want to be alone. I used to go over with my sister and two cousins. We played in this overgrown field beside the house where the grass was so tall it brushed our faces. We had this game, kind of like hide and seek mixed with calling out to find each other. One late afternoon, we were laughing and running, the grass swaying like waves, when we heard a voice say, low and calm, "The hunter is coming." We froze. We thought it was my cousin, let's call him Eli, because he loved messing with us. But the voice didn't sound like a kid. It sounded older, too steady. We yelled his name. No answer. Then we heard it again, closer this time, like it was right in front of us in the grass. "The hunter is coming." We panicked and sprinted toward the house, and then we stopped cold, because through the living room window, we saw Eli's shadow on the wall. If Eli was inside, who was speaking in the field? We burst into the living room, hearts hammering, and the shadow was still there, until we flipped on the lights. Empty room. No one. We ran straight to Pop's bedroom, and there was Eli, asleep on the bed like he hadn't moved in an hour, while Pop sat watching TV, completely oblivious. We told Pop about the voice, and even though he didn't believe in ghosts, he believed in danger. He grabbed what he kept for protection and went outside, checked the field, walked the perimeter, searched the yard. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a sound. That night, all four of us slept on the floor in Pop's room, like a little pile of scared puppies. And the house kept doing what it always did. Shadows shifting down the hallway, soft whispers where nobody stood, and upstairs, that same awful routine. Party noise, gunshot, woman screaming, body tumbling down the stairs. And we stayed anyway, because Pop was there, and we weren't going to leave him alone in that house. There were smaller things too, things that felt almost petty, like whatever lived there enjoyed little power plays. Like when we'd watch horror shows we absolutely shouldn't have been watching, and the old TV, this heavy, clunky thing you had to turn on by hand, would shut itself off, but only during that one show. Every time. We'd scream and run to Pop's room, and the whole cycle would repeat another weekend, another visit, another year. We didn't tell our parents for a long time. We thought we'd get in trouble, or we thought nobody would believe us. When we finally admitted it as teenagers, My mom and her sisters went quiet, and then they started sharing things they'd never told us, things worse than what we experienced. And suddenly it wasn't just kids being scared. It was 3 generations of the same house, the same feeling, the same presence. Later, people tried to explain it. The house was ancient. The river was right there. There was even this huge electrical tower built not too far behind the property, close enough that you could see it clearly from the back hill. Some folks said electromagnetic fields can mess with your brain, make you hallucinate, make groups of people feel paranoid or see things. Maybe. But I'll tell you the truth. Even if you gave me the cleanest scientific explanation in the world, it wouldn't erase the way that place felt. Like we were guests who'd overstayed on sacred ground. Like something watched us and waited. Pop passed away a long time ago, over 2 decades now. And the house? It's gone too. It was torn down years later, and the land got turned into a public park. Sometimes I think about going, standing where the back door used to be, looking out toward the river and just feeling close to him again. But then another part of me remembers that green glow, that voice in the grass, those footsteps above our heads. And I can't help thinking, when they dug up that land, when they broke the house apart, what if something that had been trapped there finally got loose? People say spirits don't forget. And honestly, I don't think that house ever did. So, ever since I moved, I haven't felt like myself. Not even close. The place we're in now used to belong to this very devout family. Like, the kind where every wall has something watching you. Crosses, saint pictures, little framed prayers, the whole thing. And there were these paintings everywhere too. Not valuable, not charming, just unsettling. Like they were made with love, but also with a heavy kind of intensity that lingers in a room. We cleared out most of it when we moved in, but I swear the house still kept the vibe. Like you can remove the objects, but not whatever they left behind. There's this one room in particular. Technically, it's a bedroom, but it's basically a storage closet with a bunk bed shoved into it. No real window, just this cramped, dead air box. The previous owners had their 2 daughters sleeping in there, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say it feels like a sealed compartment. We call it the drawer room, because bedroom feels like a lie. The furniture we inherited is old and stiff and uncomfortable, and it has that creepy old house smell you can never fully scrub out. But we can't afford to replace it yet, so we live with it. We try to make it ours. We really do. And then, the noises started. At first it was small stuff, soft sounds at night, like murmuring through a wall. But it didn't match anything outside. You know how you can usually tell when it's neighbors, or the building settling, or a car passing? This was different. It was too close, too specific, like a voice that almost resolves into words, and then doesn't. Like your brain keeps trying to grab onto it. And I moved here at the worst possible time. I'm in Italy, near Rome, and it was a special Holy Year kind of situation. Everything was crowded, rents were shooting up, and there were basically no options unless you wanted to pay something insane. So we took this house because it was what we could get. Simple as that. But from day one, I felt squeezed. Not physically trapped, but like the house itself was narrow. Like the hallway air was too thick. Like every corner leaned inward by an inch. Even when the place is genuinely clean, like objectively tidy, it looks wrong. Like it never quite resets. Like the mess is invisible, but permanent. And then my body started falling apart. At first I thought it was stress. Moving stress makes sense, right? But it wasn't just one sickness. It was constant. For almost 2 months, I was sick on and off. Colds, flu symptoms, fevers, sore throat, fatigue. The kind of thing where you keep thinking, okay, this is the last one. and then it comes back again like it's scheduled. Time passes, and instead of improving, it gets worse. A year and a few months in, I realized I couldn't even remember what normal felt like. The first half year, I was sick for most of it, like I'd get a short break and then crash again. And then one of the episodes got so bad I ended up in the hospital with brutal stomach pain, like deep, twisting pain that wouldn't stop. They ran test after test after test. Nothing. No explanation, no clear cause, just me, curled up and miserable, being told, everything looks fine. And it's not mold. We checked. Everyone always asks that first. Mold, damp, bad ventilation. But no, the house is dry. There's no obvious culprit. Which somehow makes it worse, because at least mold would be a villain with a name. Like freak accidents. I stabbed my hand while cooking. Full-on puncture wound, blood everywhere. Then, not long after that, I almost sliced the tip of my finger off. Another ER visit. After that, there was a third accident where I honestly just sat there holding pressure like, I can't do this again. And I dealt with it myself. It healed, luckily, but the fact that I even reached that point, that's not me. I don't usually live like that. The cruelest part is, we moved here because it's close to the sea. The sea is my favorite thing. It's the one place my brain goes quiet. And we're so close, like 20 minutes away. We both work from home, so in theory we could go all the time, even just for an hour at sunset. But I barely went. All summer, months of perfect beach weather, I was either sick, recovering, or literally stitched up. We went maybe a dozen times total, and every time I stayed home, hearing the waves in my imagination instead of actually being there, I felt this heavy sadness like I was being punished for wanting something simple. Then I had a stretch where I thought, maybe it's over. A couple of good months, I started to hope again. And now it's back, only different. It started as these unbearable headaches, like pressure behind my eyes. Then my jaw started hurting, then my teeth, then my ear, like the pain couldn't decide where to live, so it just kept moving around. I'd have a few okay days and then get slammed again. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Like my body is doing this exhausting cycle where it barely lets me breathe before dragging me under again. And every test says I'm fine. I'm in my 20s. Before this house, I'd been to the ER maybe once in my entire life. Now it's multiple times in a short span, and there were at least 2 more times I probably should have gone but didn't, because I'm tired of being looked at like I'm a mystery that isn't worth solving. Even my dog changed here. He's more reactive, more alert, more jumpy, like he's constantly listening for something I can't hear. I tell myself it's just a new environment, new smells, different routines, but in my gut, it doesn't feel that simple. And I know how this sounds, I do. But I genuinely feel like this house doesn't like me. Like it's rejecting me. Like it's pushing back. Like it's pressing its thumb into my life until I'm too exhausted to fight it. My partner, Lena, eats the same food I do, lives in the same rooms, breathes the same air. She's fine. She gets tired sometimes, normal stuff, but she's not constantly sick. So it's not food poisoning. It's not something we're both exposed to, not in any obvious way. It feels aimed. And I hate myself for even thinking that. And then there are the little things. Electronics turning on and off with no input. Lights flickering when nothing else is happening. A charger that works one day and not the next. Stuff that could totally be old wiring, totally explainable, except it always seems to happen when I'm already overwhelmed. Like the house is adding one more tiny insult just to remind me it can. I'm constantly in pain or discomfort, and nothing shows up on paper. No proof, no neat diagnosis, just this grinding, never-ending sense of wrong. So I'm asking, quietly, honestly. Has anyone ever felt like this? Like a place can get under your skin? Like you're losing your mind, but you're also not, because your body is the one screaming first. So, I've been sitting with my thoughts the last few days, Just kind of replaying the past few years in my head. And out of nowhere, this whole stretch of time came rushing back to me, like my mind dug it up on purpose. It started in 2021 when I moved into this upscale apartment complex just outside Boston. It was one of those places that looks like a hotel. Bright lobby, polished hallways, everything luxury on paper. And for the first week, it actually felt like I'd finally landed somewhere safe. Then things got off. About a week after I moved in, someone crashed into the parking garage door. The door had one of those sensors where it lifts automatically when you drive up. After the crash, it barely worked, and it took forever to get fixed, like months. That alone was annoying, but then the key fobs started acting weird too. Some days they'd work on certain doors. Some days they wouldn't work at all, like nothing would open. Picture this. I'm coming home carrying groceries, going door to door around the entire building like I'm trying to break into my own place, because every entrance just refuses to recognize me. There were nights I ended up slipping in through the garage because it was the only way. And it's hard to explain, but the whole thing felt deliberate, like the building was deciding when to let me in. Then one evening after work, I pulled into the garage and I saw something that still makes my stomach tighten when I think about it. There was this jester-looking figure, black and white outfit, like a checker pattern, crouched low beside another car. And it wasn't looking at me directly. It was watching me through the car's side mirror, like it wanted me to notice without fully turning its head. I froze. I remember my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. And the second I realized it was focused on me, I backed out and left the garage entirely. And it followed me. Not for long, maybe a couple 100 feet down the street, but long enough that my brain couldn't explain it away as a prank. It wasn't a ghost, but it also didn't move like a normal person. The best way I can describe it is, it felt like a spirit wearing a shape, something pretending. After that, I tried to convince myself it was a one-time thing. Stress, lack of sleep, city weirdness. But then came the morning with the smell. It was a Saturday, early, around 8 a.m., and I woke up because something in the air felt wrong before I even opened my eyes. And the smell, I don't even know how to describe it properly. Like burnt fruit and alcohol. Like someone had scorched peach schnapps and pumped it through the vents. It wasn't smoke exactly. It was chemical and sweet and ruined. At the same time, my neighbors down the hall were being loud, shouting, arguing. A couple, and they spoke a language I didn't understand, so it wasn't like I could make out what was happening. But the volume and the intensity of it felt like it was bleeding straight through the walls. My apartment had two views. One side looked toward a little strip with a liquor store, and the other side overlooked this lot where yellow school buses were parked, like a staging area. So the first thing I did was go to the bedroom window and look out at the bus lot. And there he was. A person, at least shaped like a person, wearing a rabbit mask, dressed head to toe in black, standing still and staring right up at my window. At first, he was in the middle of the lot. Then he climbed onto one of the parked buses, sat or crouched inside it for maybe half a minute, and then stepped back out and looked straight at me again. And what messed with me the most was the security guard. There was always a guard near that lot, always. But that morning, there was nobody. No guard, no car, nothing. I kept watching because I didn't know what else to do. He walked up and down between the buses, slow and deliberate, never fully breaking eye contact. And then I went to the living room window, the side facing the liquor store, and I saw this red beam of light cutting through my living room. Not like a glow, not like a reflection I could easily explain. It was a sharp, straight line of red light, like something was aiming through the window into my apartment. I couldn't even figure out where it came from. I remember stepping back so fast I nearly fell. That's when I panicked in a way I don't usually panic. I grabbed my phone and tried calling 911, and my calls kept dropping. Over and over, like it would start to ring and then just die. So I called an Uber. I threw a few things in a bag, and yeah, I grabbed something for protection. Not because I wanted to do anything, but because my body was screaming at me that I wasn't safe. I took the Uber to a casino a couple hours away and stayed there for a few days, because it was the first place I could think of that had cameras, people, lights, something solid. But even on the way there, the road felt wrong. There were broken down cars in weird spots, like they'd been abandoned mid-thought. And when I got close to the casino, I swear I saw these strange figures outside. People standing too still, moving too sharply, watching cars go by like they were waiting for something. I told my friends who lived out of state. I told them everything. Most of them didn't believe me. You know that feeling when you can hear someone's doubt through the phone? Like they're listening politely, but already filing it under, "You're stressed." I begged one of them to call the police on my behalf because I couldn't get through. I didn't even know what I wanted the police to do. I just wanted someone official to acknowledge that something was wrong. When I finally went back after the weekend, I called out of work that Monday. I slept like my body had been poisoned. I woke up feeling grimy, foggy, like I'd been breathing dirty air. And then the building's fire alarm went off. The whole building, full alarm. And it wasn't one of those quick chirps, it was the real thing. I ran out, down the stairs, outside into the courtyard with everyone else. And when I got out there, the lights lining the walkway, those expensive modern path lights, were smashed. Not one or two, like 10 of them in a row, shattered like someone went down the line destroying them on purpose. I called the management office and they told me the fire alarm was just an electrical issue. An electrical issue. Like that explained everything. And then a wave of new tenants moved in, all at once. I don't mean like a few people over a week. I mean it felt like an entire floor changed over in a day or two. Moving trucks, unfamiliar faces, non-stop activity. It gave the building this strange feeling, like the atmosphere shifted. That summer, I went on a run one morning and got startled near a railroad crossing because I felt something shove me. Not a bump, not me tripping. A push, right before the crossing, like a hand in the center of my back. I stopped so fast my shoes scraped. My heart was pounding. I looked around and there was nobody close enough to have done anything. After that, I changed my route completely. And during that same period, I started noticing people everywhere who just didn't seem right. Like I'd go into a cafe or a restaurant, and there would be groups of people moving in these unnatural ways, too synchronized, too stiff, like they were acting out what they thought normal looked like. They'd talk in this odd cadence, laugh half a second too late, turn their heads too sharply, stare too long. It sounds dramatic, but it felt like watching something imitate humans without really understanding how humans work. Eventually, I got a better job and moved away. And I remember thinking, okay, that chapter is over. I'm not going to carry this with me. But about a year after I moved, I was talking to a friend. His name was Marcus, who had moved into that same building around the same time I did. He told me he'd been reading posts online about people in that city being murdered over the years, and that the investigations always went cold. He said the rumors went back decades. And then, a year after that conversation, Marcus was murdered in that same city. They found him in an abandoned house. The police put out a statement, and then nothing. It's been well over a year since. No updates, no closure, just silence. And that's when the question I'd tried not to ask finally came out of me. What if that place is influenced? Not just dangerous, not just corrupt, but spiritually wrong. Like something's rooted there. I even talked to an old coworker about it, and they told me this story, how they were robbed at knife point once and got cut on the hand. They ran until they found a police officer, held up their bleeding hand, begging for help. And the officer looked at it, smirked, and drove away. They had to drive themselves to the hospital. So when I lay all of it side by side, the malfunctioning access, the figures, the red beam, the feeling of being targeted, the way help just evaporated when it was needed, it's hard not to wonder if the whole area is under some kind of darkness, something that makes people cold, something that makes truth slip through cracks. And the part that really messes with me, even after I left, even after I moved down to Connecticut, I still started noticing strange things. Not as intense, not as concentrated, but enough to make me feel like whatever I brushed up against back then didn't fully let go. And I don't tell this to scare you. I'm telling you because it happened, and because carrying something like that alone makes you feel crazy. So when I say I've been reflective lately, that's what I mean. Because I don't know what that was, but I know it was real. So, I should probably start by telling you where I'm coming from. I'm a neurodivergent young adult, early 20s, and I'm usually the kind of person who tries to explain things logically before I let them get mystical. But one night, somewhere around late autumn, like October drifting into November, I had this dream that didn't feel like a dream. It felt administered, like my brain had been gently put into a mode I didn't recognize. I woke up in this room that was almost aggressively white. Not cozy white, more like sterile, endless, nothing to hold on to white. No posters, no windows, no clutter, just blankness. And I'm sitting at a white table in my pajamas, like I'd been taken from bed and placed there without my permission, but weirdly, without fear. My body felt heavy, like I was half asleep, half sedated. You know that sensation when you're trying to move through water, like your limbs belong to someone else? Across from me, there's someone seated. And the first thing I remember thinking is, that is not a normal-looking person. They were extremely pale, like the kind of pale that makes you think of albinism, skin, hair, everything. Their hair was almost silver white. Their eyes were this light, washed-out shade, pinkish or pale amber, I couldn't tell. Their face was narrow and sharp in a delicate way, with this thin nose and small mouth. And the strangest part was that I couldn't confidently place their gender. Not because they looked androgynous in a trendy way, more like my brain couldn't grab the concept properly. They were dressed in white too, of course, like the room wanted nothing to break the theme. And they started speaking to me, or trying to. It came out as this jumble, bits of Spanish, bits of English, and then a third language that my mind couldn't label. Not made-up fantasy language, not something I recognized from TV. It felt real, like my brain just didn't have the decoder installed. I could catch fragments, like someone flipping a radio dial. You need to listen. You can. Maybe we try again. But then it would slip away into that other tongue, and I'd lose the thread. I remember looking at them and feeling this odd calm, like I trusted them without knowing why. That's what messes with me the most, honestly. Because if I saw someone like that in real life, in a white room, while I felt drugged, I should have been terrified. But I wasn't. I felt safe. And I kept staring at them with this intense sense of recognition, like I'd met them before, but not in any normal context. Like my brain was rifling through a filing cabinet going, "Where do I know you from? Where did I see you?" They seemed to notice my confusion. And I tried to speak, switching between Spanish and English, basically apologizing, telling them I wasn't understanding, that they needed to pick one language and stick to it. I even tried to gesture with my hands, but my body barely cooperated. It was like something was keeping me seated, or like gravity was heavier just for me. The person, let's call them Evo, because my mind refuses to keep calling them the figure. Evo looked frustrated. Not angry, more like someone trying to explain an important idea to a child who doesn't have the words yet. At one point, I glanced around the room, trying to find a door behind me. And the moment I turned my head, I felt this gentle pressure, like Evo lightly guided my face back toward them. Not rough, not controlling, more like, "Please, stay with me, focus." And then I got this creepiest, strangest sensation, like there might have been someone else behind me. Not that I saw them, just that instinct, like the air had an extra presence in it. Eventually, Evo slowed down. Their shoulders sank a little, like they were running out of energy, or patience, or permission. They looked past me again, toward the place I assumed a door would be. Then they looked back at me, and their expression softened in this way that felt almost sad. And then, this is the moment that's burned into my memory. They touched my cheek, like a careful, affectionate gesture, and they spoke in perfect Spanish, clear as day, no mixing, no distortion. "Maybe it's better we stop. Go back to where you were, and wake up like nothing happened." Something like that. Not necessarily word for word, but the meaning was sharp and unmistakable. And I remember trying to respond, like, "Wait, what? Stop? Go back? What is this? Who are you? Where am I?" But I didn't get the chance, because the next sensation was exactly like being put under anesthesia. That fast, sinking drift where your thoughts just loosen and the room falls away. My head dipped forward like I'd nodded off sitting up, and then everything went dark. And then I woke up in my bed, cold, slightly sweaty, and disoriented, like my brain had been shaken. The same kind of dizzy feeling I get when a car moves too fast or changes direction suddenly. I sat up and looked around like I expected that white room to still be somewhere in the corner. And then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. My dog, Nala, usually sleeps in her bed right next to mine. She's a creature of habit. But that night, she wasn't there. She was out in the hallway, in her watching spot, like she was guarding the house. I turned on my bedside light, and when I looked toward the hallway, she lifted her head slowly. Too slowly. Like she'd been in a deeper sleep than normal, like it took effort to surface. And I know, there are normal explanations. Dogs move. Dogs sleep deeply. A light turning on can make them blink and look groggy. But stacked on top of that dream, that vivid, lucid, sedated feeling experience, it rattled me. For months after, it kept popping into my mind, sometimes consciously, sometimes like my brain would replay it in the background while I was doing something normal, like washing a cup or scrolling my phone. And here's the part where family makes everything more complicated. On my mom's side, there's more belief in spiritual stuff. Ancestors, signs, angels, that kind of thing. My dad is more like me, skeptical about the details, but completely convinced we are not alone in the universe. Like, statistically, something else has to be out there. So I told them. I told my parents and also my cousin Marina, who stays with us some days for work. My dad and Marina both reacted the same way. quiet, uneasy curiosity. Like, that's strange, but with no label they felt confident putting on it. My mom immediately leaned toward the spiritual interpretation. She said it could have been an angel or a relative who passed away, trying to give me a message. But honestly, that didn't fit. I've had dreams about my late grandmother. Those feel completely different. In those dreams, we both kind of know she's gone. There's a softness to it, a familiar warmth, a kind of shared understanding that it's a dream. This wasn't like that. This felt foreign, clinical, surreal, but precise. Like someone tried to reach me through a channel that wasn't designed for my brain. And I'm left with this weird combination of feelings. Not fear exactly, but this lingering question that won't settle. Because if it was just a dream, why did it feel like I was being spoken to? And why do I still get the sense, every time I replay it, that Eva wasn't improvising? That they were trying to do something they'd done before. And for some reason, it just didn't work on me this time. So, I have to tell you what happened the other night, because it's still messing with my head a little, and I genuinely don't know if this was a freaky phone glitch or something I can't really explain. It was around 3:50 in the morning when it started. Dead quiet. My husband, Evan, and I were asleep in our bedroom, and I woke up out of nowhere because of this obscenely loud snoring. Like, the kind of snoring you'd expect from a full-grown man passed out on a couch after Thanksgiving dinner. At first, I honestly thought it was Evan. I reached over and nudged him, kind of half asleep and annoyed. But when I did, he startled awake too, like he hadn't been snoring at all. And the weirdest part was, the snoring didn't stop. We just laid there for a second, both awake now, staring at each other in the dark, while this snoring kept going like it was happening right next to the bed. Our first thought was our dog, Miso. She's a little terrier mix, and she'll do a tiny snort sometimes, but never anything remotely like this. Still, we whispered her name, like, "Miso, hey, shh," expecting her to be right there at the foot of the bed. Except, she wasn't. Niso stood up from her little bed across the room, totally silent, ears up, looking confused. And I swear to you, the snoring was still going, steady, loud, and unsettlingly human. No robotic distortion, no crackle, no speakerphone weirdness. Just deep breathing and snoring like there was a stranger sleeping beside us. Evan switched on the lamp, and that's when we realized the sound was coming from my phone on the nightstand. That alone would have been creepy enough, but listen, when I picked the phone up, the snoring got quieter, the same way it does when you lightly jostle a real person and they sort of half adjust. It didn't cut off completely, but it dropped like the source had shifted or moved. My stomach just sank. I unlocked the screen, expecting to see something. A call, a voicemail, a weird app open, a video playing, anything. But there was nothing. No call in progress, no missed calls, no notifications, no media, no recent apps running. Just the normal lock screen like the phone had been asleep the whole time. And the phone was in Do Not Disturb mode. Anything incoming should have gone straight to voicemail anyway. But the snoring kept coming through the speaker, even though the phone wasn't doing anything that should produce audio. And it never switched to the earpiece, just the bottom speaker, like someone was literally breathing into the room through it. We sat there, wide awake, just listening to it, both of us trying to explain it and failing. Finally, Evan said, "Call my phone. Just call me." So I did. I tapped his name and hit call. And the second I pressed it, instantly, the snoring was cut off mid-breath, like someone yanked a cord. and it was replaced by the normal outgoing ringing tone. Like the phone suddenly remembered it was a phone. After that, everything behaved totally normal. No call log appeared that explained the snoring. No notifications popped up. The phone didn't heat up. No weird battery drain. Nothing you could point to and say, "Oh, yep, that was it." But the part that still gets me? Miso. And that's honestly it. That's the whole story. I'm telling you because I want a sane explanation. Some rare telecom glitch, a stuck audio buffer, a weird accidental stream, anything. But the way it sounded so real, and the way it got quieter when I lifted the phone, and the way it stopped the exact moment an outgoing call began, I don't know. I just don't know what to make of it. So, I'm going to tell you this the way it actually felt, because I still don't know what to do with it. I'm not someone who's out here looking for spooky stuff. I go to church most weeks. I keep my life pretty steady. And honestly, I've never had what you'd call a paranormal experience. If anything, I'm the person who talks myself out of being dramatic. A couple years back, I was convinced we had mice. I kept hearing tiny little sounds and I thought, okay, great, we've got a problem. So I hired an exterminator, this guy named Frank, and he did the full sweep, basement to attic. He found nothing. Still, just to be safe, I paid to have a few gaps sealed. They added that pest-resistant insulation in a couple spots, and they put some traps down. Nothing. Not a single sign of mice. Not then, not since. But even after that, the house still felt off. Like the air in it doesn't sit right sometimes. And I kept telling myself it was just the age of it, because it's an old place, about a century old, big, creaky, the kind of house that makes normal settling noises, and you have to constantly remind yourself, this is what old houses do. It used to be the rectory for the church next door. Not my church, a different one. That's just a fact about the property, you know? But it's one of those facts that started to feel heavier once all this started. Most weekends, I'm home alone. My kids go to their dad's, and it's just me and my cats. And my cats, listen, these are not clingy, anxious cats. They're the type that do their own thing, sleep upstairs in their tower, and only grace me with affection when they feel like it. Then, one night, my bedroom door started popping open. Not like, oh, it didn't latch all the way. I mean, it would be closed, and then I'd hear that little shift, and it would ease open like someone had pushed it. It happened enough times that I got annoyed and put hooks on a couple of the bedroom doors to keep heat in when rooms weren't being used. Practical solution. No drama. I even set up indoor cameras because I thought, maybe I'm just missing something. Maybe the cats are pushing it. The cameras caught nothing. Ever. And then the doorbell started. 2-ish weeks ago, late at night, my doorbell rang. Not once. Over and over. Like someone was standing there leaning on it, letting off just enough to press again. It was one of those old-school wired doorbells, the kind that goes ding-dong with the little chime box mounted right near the bedrooms, so it's loud and obnoxious and impossible to ignore. I shot out of bed, heart pounding, and went to look. No one. I looked outside, expecting to see footprints because it had snowed earlier. Nothing. I checked my camera feed, porch cam, driveway angle. Nothing. Not even a weird shadow. The next morning, still kind of shaky but trying to be logical, I went to the hardware store and bought a simple battery doorbell. Nothing fancy, just a little modern button and a wireless chime. I replaced the old one. I fully removed the old button from the door frame. Like, it wasn't even there anymore. That night, same time, the new doorbell went off. Rapid fire. Insistent. Like someone was mad that I wasn't answering. I stood there in my hallway thinking, okay, wind? Faulty button? Maybe something is shorting? I yanked the batteries out of the new one and went back to bed, telling myself I was being ridiculous. The next night, I woke up again at almost the exact same time, and I heard the doorbell. Except, it wasn't the new one. It was the old doorbell, the one I'd removed. I got up fast and went to open my bedroom door, and it wouldn't open because the hook was latched from the outside. I just stood there for a second staring at it, genuinely waiting for my brain to come up with a normal explanation, and it couldn't. No one else was home. My kids were with their dad. I always lock the front door. Always. My bedroom has a second way out, a side porch door. So I went out that way and looped around to the front, keys shaking in my hand like I couldn't get them into the lock. Front door was still locked. When I stepped into the foyer, the closet door across from my bedroom was wide open. And that closet door is never open. I keep it shut on purpose because there's this massive safe inside it, left behind years ago by the church next door because it's too big to haul out. It's basically the only thing in there, and I have this weird fear one of my cats will somehow climb in or get stuck around it, so I keep the closet closed. Like, I'm strict about it. The closet was open. And no, it can't swing into my bedroom door or pop the latch or anything like that. The handles are on opposite sides. There's no, oh, maybe the knob caught explanation. I checked cameras again. Nothing. No one on either porch. No motion, no footsteps, no cars. Nothing. I stayed up most of that night, just sitting there with my house feeling too big and too quiet. Even my cats wouldn't come downstairs. They stayed upstairs like they were refusing to cross some invisible line. The next night, I tried to be brave and normal. I left my bedroom door cracked and put a small heater in there for warmth, trying to convince myself the hook thing was a fluke and I'd just gotten myself worked up. Then it happened again. 2:41 a.m. And this time, this is the part that makes me feel insane. Both doorbells went off. The new one and the old one at the same time. Like the house was making a point. I got up, ripped the batteries out of the new one, and I grabbed a screwdriver and went to the chime box on the wall, the old one. I popped it open and disconnected what I could, pulling a wire loose so there was no way it should be able to chime again. I didn't even know the correct term for what I was yanking off. I was just thinking, stop, stop, stop. While I'm doing that, I hear the hook on my bedroom door start to rattle. Not a gentle wiggle, a deliberate rattle, like someone testing it. I turned my head in time to see the hook jump up, pop free, and the door ease open. I finished what I was doing, walked over, hooked it again, and, this is embarrassing, but I said out loud, half joking, half daring the air, okay, do it again. I turned away to put the screwdriver down. I took maybe 3 steps, and I heard the hook pop. I turned back and watched the door swing open, and then it slammed shut. Not a draft, not a gentle click, a slam that shook the frame. Upstairs, my cats went absolutely feral. Hissing, growling, that low, angry sound cats make when they feel cornered. They are normally the calmest little creatures, and I've never heard them sound like that in my life. The next night, my kids came home, and I didn't tell them. I didn't tell their dad either. I didn't want to scare them, and honestly, I didn't want anyone thinking I was losing it. But then my daughter, Mila, came downstairs in the middle of the night and said she heard something. I tried to stay casual, like, what kind of something? And she hesitated and said, It sounded like the doorbell, but quieter, like it was far away. There was no doorbell going off. Nothing on the cameras, nothing on the porch. Just my kid hearing the same thing my body has been bracing for every night. And the worst part is, I don't even know what I'm afraid of. I just know I'm scared to go to sleep in my own home, because it feels like I'm not alone in it. Even when every camera, every lock, every logical check says I am. So let me tell you something that still gives me goosebumps, even though it happened when we were kids. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where you wake up way too early on purpose because cartoons are basically sacred. My brother Callum and I came padding downstairs in our socks, half asleep but laser focused on the TV. We plopped ourselves in the living room, all cozy and smug, and that's when we noticed something odd. Our mom's car wasn't in the driveway. We could see the whole driveway from this big front window, like a perfect little lookout spot. So it wasn't a maybe it's there situation. It was just gone. We figured Mom had popped out to one of those early morning church prayer meetups she sometimes went to with a friend, and she'd be back any minute. No big deal. So we went back to cartoons. A little while later, we both heard it. That unmistakable sound of tires crunching on gravel. Our driveway was all loose stone, so you could hear a car coming before you could even see it. Then we saw the car turning in and coming up the drive. And here's the thing. We didn't just hear it. We actually watched it come in. It bumped up over the curb, rolled over the little footpath, and eased onto the driveway like normal. Like absolutely, boringly normal. Then it stopped about halfway up, and just sat there. At first, we didn't think much of it, but then a minute passed, then another, and Mum still hadn't gotten out. No car door, no footsteps, no keys jingling, no slam, nothing. Callum turned to me and goes, "What's Mum doing?" And I remember shrugging like, I don't know, maybe she's on the phone? But even as I said it, something felt off. Because if you're parked in the driveway and your kids are visible in the front window, wouldn't you wave? Wouldn't you come in? Wouldn't you do literally anything? So I told him, just go check. Make sure she's okay. He hopped down from the couch and walked to the front door, and I stayed planted right where I was, pretending I wasn't suddenly nervous. I kept the TV on, but I wasn't really watching it anymore. I was listening for something. Callum came back in less than a minute, and he says, really quietly, "There's no one in the car." I actually laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous that my brain didn't know what else to do. I was like, "What do you mean there's no one in it?" And he goes, "It's locked, and it's empty." That's when my stomach dropped. Because we hadn't heard the door open or close. We hadn't seen anyone get out. And again, we were staring straight at the driveway. If Mom had stepped out and walked away, we would have seen her. There wasn't anywhere to go without crossing the front of the house. I remember getting that tight, prickly feeling up my arms, like when you realize you might be in trouble but you don't know why yet. So I told him, "Go wake Dad. Tell him something weird is happening." He ran upstairs, and I just sat there staring at the window like the car might do something else, like it might start moving again on its own. Then Callum came back down, and I swear to you, his face had gone that ghostly pale, like someone had drained all the color out of him. He said, "Mom and Dad are both asleep, in bed, both of them." I stood up so fast I nearly knocked the remote off the couch. Because, what? That didn't make any sense. Mom's car was right there. We watched it come in. We heard it. We saw it stop. But Mum was upstairs asleep? So I rushed to the little dish in the hallway where the car keys always lived. And there they were, sitting in the bowl like they'd never moved, like nobody had touched them at all. I just remember staring at them, completely frozen, like the keys were going to explain themselves if I glared hard enough. And the thing is, the car hadn't just appeared. We watched it come in, especially the part where it climbed up over the curb onto the driveway. That's not something a car does silently or subtly. And it didn't roll down the slope either. Our driveway angled slightly downward, so if it was somehow just coasting or the handbrake failed or whatever, it wouldn't stop neatly halfway up. It would have kept rolling and smashed into the fence near the garden. But it stopped like someone pressed the brake. Like someone was driving. Only there was nobody there. When we finally told our parents later, they brushed it off like kids being kids. Like we'd had matching dreams, or one of us made it up and the other just went along with it. But Callum and I have talked about it more times than I can count, even years later, and we both remember it the same way. Honestly, I know how it sounds. I do. It's the kind of story people smile politely at and then file under, sure, okay. But I'm telling you, that was one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a shadow in the corner or a bump in the night. It was normal life, normal morning, normal cartoons. Right up until the moment we realized the car that came home had no one inside it. And to this day, I still can't explain how that happened. Not even a little bit. So, this happened back when I was in 10th grade, right in the middle of exam season. We were living in northern India then, and everything already felt like pressure. Notes, deadlines, the constant hum of worry in the background. On top of that, my family had moved into a new apartment only a few months earlier, so nothing felt fully settled yet. You know that feeling? Like your body lives there, but your mind hasn't unpacked. One night, I studied way too late. My eyes were burning, my head was heavy, and when I finally shut my books, I just wanted sleep to swallow me whole. I turned off the light and lay down. The room wasn't pitch black. There was this pale spill of moonlight and a bit of streetlight coming through the curtains. My bed was right beside the window, so even in the dark, I could still make out shapes, edges of furniture, the outline of the door, shadows resting in corners. I was lying on my back, trying to slow my breathing, when I casually glanced toward my feet, and immediately, something felt wrong, like my brain hit a wall, because there was an extra leg near my feet, not mine. It was long and heavy-looking, slightly bent at the knee. The color was this dull gray, almost see-through, but not in a weak way. It looked real, like it had weight, like it belonged on the mattress. And above it, where a torso should have been, there was this dark, cloudy mass. Not a clean shape, more like a thick smoke or fog that kept shifting, but still, gathered enough to feel like a presence. For a second, my mind tried to correct it. Like, no, that's a shadow. That's a trick of light. That's something else. But it didn't change. And then the worst thought landed, slow and icy. If that is near my feet, then its face would be right next to mine. I tried to turn my head to the left. I couldn't. My entire body locked up like it had been switched off. Not even panic at first, just this stunned, frozen numbness. My heart was going insane, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but I couldn't move my arms, my legs, nothing. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even whisper. It felt like I was trapped inside my own skin. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds feel like minutes in that kind of moment. But somehow, I pushed against it with everything I had, like I was trying to break through invisible cement. And the instant I could move, I bolted. I didn't think. I didn't look back. I just ran. To get to my parents' room, I had to cross the living room. Our living room had these wide, sliding glass doors that opened onto the balcony. We were on the 6th floor, so the balcony felt like this dark, open edge to the night. As I ran parallel to those glass doors, something outside snapped my attention so hard it almost made me trip. There was someone on the balcony. A figure, like an older woman, broad in shape, more silhouette than detail. It was so dark out there that I couldn't see a face, but I could feel her outline, like it was carved into the night itself. And the moment I started running, she stood up, and ran too, parallel to me, same direction, same pace, like she was matching me perfectly, step for step, only separated by the glass. I swear, it didn't feel like coincidence. It felt intentional, like she'd been waiting to move until I moved. I don't remember making any sound. I just remember the impact, my shoulder hitting my parents' door, my hands fumbling, my body shaking so violently I could barely stand. I stumbled inside, and I think I collapsed onto the floor or the bed. I don't even know. I was trembling so hard, it felt like my bones were vibrating. But all I could do was shake my head and try to breathe. And after that, nothing else happened that night. No footsteps, no knocking, no sounds from the balcony. Just quiet, like the apartment had returned to normal and left me alone to question my own mind. Months later, after we'd moved out of that building, my father mentioned something casually, like he was talking about traffic or the price of vegetables. He said, "You know, I used to see an old woman on the balcony sometimes when I came home late." Just like that. I stared at him, and my stomach turned cold. He told me he never brought it up back then because he didn't want to scare me during exams. He thought maybe it was his tired eyes or shadows, or just a strange illusion, so he kept it to himself. And then, later, I heard something else from a neighbor we'd stayed in touch with. Before that apartment complex was built, there had been a huge banyan tree on that exact spot. Old, famous in the area. The kind of tree people talk about quietly, the kind they don't mess with. It was cut down to make way for the building. And I remember just sitting there after hearing that, quiet, still, because it felt like the final piece sliding into place. Like my mind had been holding its breath this whole time, and that was the last line it needed to finally exhale. So, let me take you back to 2018, when I was living in Utrecht, sharing this slightly creaky old apartment with two friends, Milo and Jonas. The place had character, you know? Tall windows, narrow stairs, and a quiet canal that ran right behind the building. Close enough that if you leaned out from our little balcony, you could see the water sliding past like it had somewhere important to be. Most nights after dinner, Milo had this habit. Nothing big, nothing theatrical. He'd take a tiny pinch of leftovers, like a couple grains of rice, a pea or two, maybe a crumb of bread, and drop it into the canal. Now, we were pretty spiritual back then. Before we ate, we'd offer the meal. A quick prayer, a moment of intention. And Milo's thinking was simple. If the food is offered with love, then whoever receives it benefits. Fish, ducks, whatever. In our tradition, sanctified food, prasadam, is meant to uplift consciousness, no matter who gets it. So in his mind, that little nightly offering was a small act of compassion, like feeding unseen neighbors. And honestly, it just became part of the rhythm of the house. Dinner, cleanup, Milo stepping out for a second, water rippling. Done. Then Milo went away for a while, about 10 days, I think, visiting his sister up north. During that stretch, the routine stopped. It was just me, Jonas, and my partner Leah, who came to stay for the week. We still cooked the same, still offered the food the same way, but no one was tossing that little portion into the canal anymore. And that's when the apartment started to feel wrong. It wasn't like a movie. Nothing jumped out, no slamming doors every 5 minutes. It was subtler than that, almost worse because of it. The kitchen was the center of it. At night especially, you'd walk in there and the temperature felt noticeably colder, like the air was heavier. And whenever any of us cooked, there was this steady, skin-prickling feeling that someone was standing too close, right at your shoulder, like they were watching what you were doing. Even if you knew you were alone, your body didn't believe it. You'd find yourself turning around, expecting to see someone behind you, and there'd be nothing. But the feeling stayed. Sometimes there were tiny sounds, soft shifting, a kind of slow, breathy presence, like the room was occupied in a way you couldn't explain. What really got me was that the three of us felt it separately. Nobody planted the idea. Jonas mentioned it first, super casually, like he didn't want to make it dramatic. Just, "Do you ever feel like someone's in the kitchen with you?" And Leah, without missing a beat, goes, "Yes, every single night." And then the physical stuff started. Random headaches. That heavy, drained feeling in your limbs like you'd slept wrong. But it would hit specifically after spending time in the kitchen. Standing there too long felt exhausting. Being in there alone started to feel genuinely scary, like you were doing something you weren't supposed to be doing. And then came the little incidents. The kind that, on their own, you could shrug off. But stacked together, night after night, they start to feel like a pattern. The fridge door was open when none of us remembered touching it. We'd hear the soft thump of it opening and closing when we were in the living room. Leah dropped her fork mid-bite once, like her hand just let go for no reason. Jonas swore he heard utensils clinking in the sink when the kitchen lights were off and nobody was in there. Always the kitchen. Always. So I said, out loud, kind of sharp, kind of daring, "All right, if someone's actually here, give me a sign. Right now." And I swear to you, instantly, the entire right side of my body reacted like it had been plugged into ice. Every hair stood up. Not gradually. Not, "Oh, maybe I'm imagining it." It was immediate, like a cold electric ripple shot from my shoulder down my arm and into my ribs. I froze in place. At the exact same moment, Lee inhaled like she'd been startled and rubbed her shoulders, saying she felt this pressure, like hands hovering just behind her. And Jonas's face went pale and he said, "It's hard to breathe in here suddenly." We all looked at each other with that same expression, like, okay, it's not just me. And the strangest part was this. It didn't feel violent. It wasn't rage. It felt desperate. Hungry, but not in the normal sense. Like something had gotten used to receiving a little offering every night, like clockwork, and then it stopped. And whatever it was didn't know how to ask. It just pressed closer. That's the best way I can describe it. Not attacking, pressing. We didn't try to be heroes after that. We got practical. We started chanting mantras in the apartment, softly at first, then more steadily. We left lights on in the kitchen at night. Lee put up a couple of spiritual images we'd brought with us. Nothing fancy, just things that made the space feel protected, anchored. And over the next few days, the heaviness started to loosen, like the apartment could exhale again. When Milo came back, we told him everything, every detail, all of it. And he didn't laugh. He also didn't get scared. He just listened, really quietly, then nodded like it made a kind of sense to him. He said something like, "I always did it with compassion, but maybe I wasn't being conscious enough about the prayer." That night, after dinner, he did it again. Took a tiny portion of prasadam, stepped out, and this time he paused. He actually prayed, deliberately, that whoever received it, seen or unseen, could be helped, could be uplifted, could find peace. And after that? Nothing. No cold pocket in the kitchen, no hovering feeling, no weird sounds, no headaches. The apartment felt light again, like the walls were friendly. Milo kept doing the offering most nights after that, and the rest of the time we lived there, almost 2 more years, the place stayed calm. It honestly felt like everything was finally in balance again. Us, the space, and whatever or whoever had been lingering by that canal, waiting for something small but meaningful. So, a little context first, because this story kind of needs it. Before I was even born, my family owned this modest little place in a gated countryside community, about an hour and a half from the city. Nothing luxurious, just a weathered old house my grandparents built ages ago, a lean-to shed, and this surprisingly roomy backyard where you could actually hear yourself think. It was our summer escape, the place we'd go when the city started feeling too loud and too close. Every single summer break, from the time I was a baby until I was about 15, I stayed there with my grandma, Marta. And when I say I was there from the start, I mean from the start. My parents brought me out there before I could even walk properly. That house is wrapped around some of my earliest memories like a scent you can't quite name. And the most important detail is this. Our land sat right on the edge of a forest. Not near a forest, not a short walk from one. I mean, you stepped out into the yard and there it was. Dark, crowded trees pressed up like a wall at the edge of the world. Between our fence and the forest was a narrow dirt lane, then another tall fence that surrounded the whole community. So it was like our house, our fence, a strip of road, and then this forest that just waited there. We sold that place about 6 years ago, moved somewhere brighter and more convenient. A better location, better everything. And yet, I still carry that forest with me. Because from the very first memories I have of that place, I was terrified of that particular stretch of woods. And I don't mean kids are scared of spooky trees at night, terrified. I mean a fear that didn't make sense even to me, a fear that felt older than my own thoughts. It only happened at night. During the day, I was fearless. I ran all over those fields, climbed around, got dirty, got lost, found my way back. But as soon as the sun dropped and the windows started turning into black mirrors, something changed inside me. When I was really little, the fear was so strong I wouldn't go near uncovered windows. If the curtains were open, I'd keep my distance like the glass itself could hurt me. And the worst part was that I couldn't explain it to anyone without sounding ridiculous. Because what do you even say? I don't like the forest. No, it wasn't dislike. It was this heavy, instinctive certainty that if I looked too long, something would look back. As I got older, that feeling didn't fade like most childhood fears do. It didn't get laughed out of me. It didn't get replaced by new anxieties. It stayed, steady and sharp. And whenever I had to step outside at night, like to grab something from the shed or take out the trash, I'd get hit with this horrible drop in my stomach. That sinking feeling. Like my body was warning me before my brain could catch up. I'd be halfway down the porch steps and suddenly it would feel like I shouldn't be here. Like the forest wasn't just there in the dark, like it was aware. I can't describe it better than this. It felt like being watched. Not imagined, not spooky vibes. More like your skin knows you're being stared at, even when your eyes can't confirm it. And the weirdest part? It was only me. My grandma never felt it. No one else did. My family could sit outside at night, chatting like it was nothing, while I was trying to act normal through a pounding heart. I didn't want to be the dramatic kid. I didn't want to be the one who made things up, but I wasn't making anything up. And yes, during the day, I explored that forest too, the exact patch that haunted me at night. And there was nothing special there, nothing that should have marked it as wrong. There was an abandoned little pond that was mostly dried up, and this low mound that turned out to be an old dumping spot, trash buried under soil from years ago. Not magical, not dramatic, just messy forest. I even got curious enough later on to check old maps from before the neighborhood existed. Same story, just more forest back then. No old buildings, no marked sites, no something happened here dot on the page. I went searching for history, local stories, accidents, anything. Nothing. But Marta, my grandma, used to talk about something in that forest. She called it the Wanderer's Clearing. In our language, it was closer to the clearing where people lose their sense, like a place where you walk in and your brain forgets which way is out. She said she'd heard it when she was young, and that older people avoided it. And then she'd say this part that always made my neck tighten. When big storms came through, they didn't pass straight over that clearing. They circled it. And the thing is, I watched that happen more than once. Every summer, thunderstorms rolled in like they always do. You'd hear the first grumble, feel the air thicken, smell that sharp metal scent. And the rain would start, hard, loud, drumming on the roof for an hour or two. Then it would stop, like someone had shut a tap. The clouds would drift off, the world would brighten again, and you'd think, okay, it's over. And then, later, it would come back. The same storm, the same heavy rain, like it had looped around and returned on purpose. And I'm not talking about once. I saw it happen over and over, the storm making full circles, sometimes 5 loops, sometimes more, like something in that area kept tugging it back around. I always assumed there had to be some clean scientific explanation. Wind patterns, temperature differences, geography, whatever. But even now, I haven't found an explanation that matches the way it looked from that yard. Not neatly, anyway. Then there's what Marta used to swear happened with ball lightning. She told me stories that I thought were just that, stories, until other relatives confirmed them like it was no big deal. They said that during a couple of those storms, a glowing sphere, actual ball lightning, came out of the forest. Not in the sky, not far away, from the trees. It would drift toward our property like it was curious, and sometimes it would circle the house, slowly, calmly, like it had all the time in the world. And then it would slam into the fence. Metal posts would light up at the tops, glowing and spitting little discharges, like the whole fence was briefly alive. Multiple people said it happened, independently, with the same details. And listen, I know how this sounds. I'm not saying there's definitely something supernatural in the woods. I'm not even trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just telling you what I lived with. And I need you to understand this too. I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm not afraid of forests at night in general. I've done long hikes, slept alone in a tent miles from anyone, listened to animals moving outside the fabric and felt perfectly fine. I know what normal nighttime fear feels like. This wasn't that. This was something else. This was this deep, physical sense of dread, like being watched, but more than watched, like being measured, like being noticed in a way you didn't want to be, like prey realizing it's been singled out. And that's the part I can't solve. Because we left. We sold the place. The forest is someone else's background now. But whatever that feeling was, it never stayed behind. So, I'm a 40-year-old bloke from the UK, and for as long as I can remember, weird things, the kind you can't quite explain, have had a habit of orbiting my life. But the strangest stretch of it all happened during this short little window back in late 2003 into early 2004, when everything went off. Like reality was just a touch out of alignment. To understand why I ended up where I did, you've got to know my parents weren't exactly the warm and fuzzy type. They weren't addicts, they weren't violent, they were just absent. The sort of people who did the bare minimum: food, clothes, roof, but without any love behind it. And once you were old enough to function on your own, they acted like their job was done. So when I was 18, not long before my birthday, they decided they were moving across the country. And I still remember my mom standing in my doorway like she was telling me the weather. She said they'd bought a place miles away, and there wouldn't really be room for me. No apology, no discussion, no, what are you going to do? Just, we're going. You'll sort yourself out. Luckily, I had a girlfriend at the time, I'll call her Hannah, and her family had been the closest thing I'd had to a support system. Her older brother, Gareth, was going through a rough patch with work and had a spare room, so it became this awkward but workable plan. I'd move in with him for a bit, finish my studies, keep my part-time job, contribute what I could, and try to get my feet under me. Gareth lived in this small town called Loughton, right on the edge of Epping Forest. And when I say edge, I mean it felt like the town had been built inside a clearing and the forest just pressed in from every direction. If you've ever been there, you know the place has a reputation. Ancient woodland, old history, dark stories. The kind of area where people talk about hauntings in that half-joking, half-not way. His flat was above an old shop on a main street. Cobbled road, steep hill, those old timber-framed buildings that look like they've been watching generations pass by. The shop below sold home improvement stuff. Windows, doors, that sort of thing, which always made me laugh because the building itself still had these old leaded panes that couldn't be replaced because of conservation rules. To get into the flat, you didn't go in through the front like you'd expect. You crossed this little back drive, and the front door was actually at the rear. Inside was a long, windowless corridor. On the right, first a utility room, then the bathroom. At the very end, a small kitchen and a staircase up to the main living space and bedrooms. It felt like the layout had been cobbled together by someone trying to make a shop building behave like a home. Upstairs, there were 2 big bedrooms and a generously sized lounge. Gareth had a teenage son, I'll call him Lewis, who stayed between Gareth's place and his mum's. No fixed schedule, more like he turned up when he felt like it, and Gareth just rolled with it. The arrangement was, I took Gareth's bedroom, Gareth took Lewis's room, and when Lewis came over, Gareth slept on the sofa. Not ideal, but everyone acted like it was temporary, so nobody made a big deal of it. And for the first few weeks, honestly, it was fine. Gareth became this older brother figure. We'd play Xbox, have a couple of beers, watch football. Lewis treated me like the sort of older cousin you can tolerate, and Hannah would come by and it would feel normal. Like I could build something stable from the rubble my parents had left. But then the flat started to feel wrong, and you never felt alone there. Even when you were the only person in the flat, you'd get that weird certainty that someone was nearby. Not imagination, not paranoia. That instinct humans have when there's another presence in the house. Except you'd turn corners and find nothing. I can't remember the exact first thing that happened. The order of events gets fuzzy. But one early moment still plays in my head like a clip from a film. I was alone in the flat one day, rare quiet gap between college and work. I went downstairs to use the bathroom and do laundry. As I came out into that hallway, I caught this waft of Hannah's perfume. And it wasn't subtle. It was her. The exact scent. I remember thinking maybe it was on clothes in the laundry basket, So I carried it down the hall to the utility area, loaded the machine, turned, and I saw her. Just for a second, the back of her, walking the way from me down the corridor toward the kitchen, like she'd just come in and was heading upstairs. So I called out, casually, like, "Han?" Nothing. I called again. Still nothing. I followed, because why wouldn't I? I watched her turn right into the kitchen area by the stairs, and when I stepped into the kitchen a moment later, no Hannah. But the cupboard where Gareth kept that plastic bag full of plastic bags, you know, the one every household seems to have, was open, and the bags were strewn across the floor like someone had yanked them out in a hurry. I stood there holding the laundry basket, just confused. I called upstairs. No reply. Went up, checked the lounge, checked both bedrooms. Empty. I was alone. And I remember this moment where my body just went still. You know when your brain is trying to bargain with what it just saw? Like, I definitely saw her. I did. I know I did. And yet there was nowhere she could have gone in the time it took me to follow. I tidied the bags away because what else do you do? And I didn't mention it immediately. I think part of me didn't want to hear myself say it out loud. But a few days later, I told Gareth, and the color drained from his face. He told me something that had happened not long before I moved in. Lewis, apparently, was prone to sleepwalking. Nothing dramatic, just that mild sort where he'd wander, mutter nonsense, sometimes wake up somewhere random and laugh it off the next morning. One night, Gareth woke up and heard Lewis moving around. He lay there at first, waiting for the usual. The shuffle, the door, then silence. But instead, he heard Lewis open his bedroom door and go downstairs. A bit of time passed, and Gareth decided he'd better check on him. So he went down into that long, dark hallway and saw Lewis standing at the far end, just staring into the utility room. And here's the detail Gareth couldn't shake. Lewis wasn't wandering or swaying like a sleepy kid. He was still, eyes open, fixed. The utility area didn't have a proper door, more like an open arch, and Lewis was standing right at it, looking into the dark like something in there had his full attention. Gareth told me he felt terrified in a way he couldn't explain. Like every instinct in his body was telling him not to go near his own son. But of course he did, because he had to. And the moment he got close, Lewis sort of blinked and came out of it, confused, half awake. Gareth led him back toward the stairs, and when they reached the kitchen, the plastic bag full of bags had been dragged out, bags all over the floor. Gareth had assumed Lewis did it in his sleep, until I told him I'd seen Hannah and the bags, and nobody else was there. The TV would change channels on its own. The radio would click on and off. Lights would flicker in that irritating way that makes you look up, even though you're trying not to. Once, Gareth and I were watching a match, beers in hand, laughing at something on screen. And we heard this unmistakable rustling sound downstairs. Plastic. Crinkling. Moving. We both went quiet at the same time, like we'd rehearsed it. Then we went downstairs together and found the bags again, dragged out, sprawled across the kitchen floor like someone had played with them. At least that time we both heard it, which somehow made it worse. But the one night I still think about, the one that sits at the top of the pile, happened near the end of my stay. For whatever reason, I decided to sleep on the sofa in the lounge. Maybe I felt guilty taking Gareth's room. Maybe Lewis was coming over. I honestly don't remember the reason, just the night itself. I remember the streetlight glow coming through the old windows, that dull orange wash that makes everything look like it's underwater. I remember the faint chill from the leaded panes. I lay with my head near the arm of the sofa closest to the lounge door, and at some point in the night, I woke up. Not fully, not at first, just that sudden, sharp awareness that pulls you up from sleep like a hook. And I heard this sound. I've never been able to describe it properly. The closest I can get is, imagine the sensation of pins and needles when your foot goes numb, but translated into a noise. A thin, high, prickling kind of ringing. Not loud, just invasive. And then I knew, someone was standing right by the sofa, at the arm, near my head. I didn't see anything. I didn't move. I couldn't. It was like my body had decided for me. Don't react. Don't breathe. Don't give it anything. The cold was intense. Not just the room being chilly, but that deep cold that feels like it's inside your chest. I shut my eyes, pulled the blanket up tight around my shoulders and neck, buried my face into the back of the sofa like a child, and just waited. I remember silently begging whatever it was to leave. Eventually, I must have drifted off again, because the next thing I remember is morning light, and that weird embarrassment you feel after a night like that, like you've done something wrong just by being scared. A few months later, maybe 3, maybe closer to 4, I moved out into my own place like I'd planned. Hannah and I didn't last, not long term. We split a couple of years later, like a lot of young couples do. And over time, I lost touch with Gareth and Lewis too. But I've been thinking about that flat recently, about that corridor, the smell of perfume that wasn't there, the bags, the cold, that sound in the night. Because the truth is, this wasn't the first strange thing that's happened around me, and it wasn't the last. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. I'm so excited today, and even more excited to be here sharing paranormal stories and experiences from around the world. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and feel free to send in your own paranormal experiences too. Alright, let's jump into today's stories. And before we start, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest uploads. Ready? Let's get into it. Okay, so listen. I moved into this new apartment maybe 10 days ago, and I swear, from the very first time I walked in, something in me just tightened. I've always been like that. I don't know how to explain it without sounding dramatic, but I get these instincts. Like a place can feel off, the way the air feels wrong before a storm. My brother Leo and my aunt Nadia helped me bring my stuff in. Everyone was laughing, carrying boxes, doing the whole new place, fresh start thing. And I was smiling too, trying to match the vibe, but inside I kept thinking, why does this feel like I'm not alone? That first night was awful. Not, I'm nervous because it's a new home awful, like deep, sour, nauseating dread. I remember lying there thinking, if I stay here long enough, I'm going to throw up. I barely slept. And then in the morning, I looked down and my legs were dotted with bruises. Not huge ones, but enough to make me pause. I bruise easily, so I told myself, okay, you bumped into something while moving boxes. Calm down. I was also binging scary videos at the time, so I tried to be rational and not feed my own paranoia. But then little things started happening. Stuff I couldn't quite explain, but also couldn't fully prove. Like a ceramic cup I know I left on the coffee table. I went to the bathroom, came back, and it was gone. I looked everywhere and finally found it sitting in the kitchen sink like someone had tidied it away. And I remember standing there, staring at it, trying to convince myself I'd done it without thinking. You know when you're like, maybe I'm just on autopilot. So I let it go. Then objects started falling. Not constantly, but randomly, like a book sliding off a shelf when nothing touched it, or a little trinket clinking onto the floor when I'd been across the room. Every time it happened, I'd jump, then immediately scold myself. Hold building, uneven surfaces. Stop making this into a horror movie. During the day, I mostly felt okay. Just every once in a while, I'd get that prickly sensation, like someone was staring at the back of my neck. I'd turn around fast, expecting to catch someone in the act, and of course, nothing. Empty room, quiet apartment. But at night? At night, it was different. At night, it felt like the apartment was aware of me. And the creepiest part is, I started getting used to it. Like, I'd do my little routine, check the hallway, peek into the bathroom, look into the bedroom corners, and everything would be normal. No one there. So my brain would go, see? Nothing. And I'd try to sleep with that constant, watched feeling buzzing over my skin. Here's the thing. I'm not someone who thinks everything is evil. I believe in weird stuff, I guess, but I'm not out here trying to summon spirits or whatever. And for most of those nights, it didn't feel like something wanted to hurt me. It felt more like something was observing, curious, present. Like I'd walked into someone else's space and they were silently deciding what to do with me. I didn't tell anyone. I mean, who do you even tell? My friends would laugh, my family would worry, and I didn't want anyone thinking I'd lost it. Plus, if nothing bad was happening, why stir up panic? I can't explain the difference in a way that makes me sound sane, but it stopped feeling neutral. It started feeling closer, sharper, like the air had teeth. And then last night happened. I have insomnia, so my nights are usually the same. I'm up late, scrolling or gaming, telling myself one more thing until I'm exhausted enough to pass out. That night, I finally shut everything off and lay there in the dark, trying to sleep. And the second I turned the lights out, boom. That same sickness from the first night came back, except worse, like my whole body knew before my mind did. My stomach dropped, my skin went cold, and I remember thinking, no, not this again. I opened my eyes and I looked around because it felt stupid not to. And I saw something. Not like a clear face, not like a person standing there under a lamp. More like a shape, like the suggestion of a woman, tall and thin, made out of darkness that didn't match the darkness around it. And the moment my eyes locked on, it was gone, like it blinked out. My heart was going crazy, but I did what I always do. I tried to explain it away. You're tired, you're stressed, your eyes are playing tricks on you. So I closed my eyes again and forced myself to breathe like everything was normal. And then my brain served me this image, totally uninvited. A woman reaching for my feet. Like the kind of intrusive thought that's so vivid it makes you flinch. And right as that image hit, I felt my left foot get wrapped in this buzzing pressure. Not a hand, not fingers, more like, imagine electricity pooling around your skin, like a tight, static glove. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was wrong. Like my body recognized it as not mine. I freaked out. I kicked my blanket off and sat up fast, staring down at my feet like I expected to see burn marks or something. And that's when I saw it again. This time, it wasn't across the room. It was closer, like it had crouched low, half hidden near the side of the bed, almost like it was trying to tuck itself out of sight. And I know how that sounds, I do, but I swear I saw the outline, the shape, the presence of it. And then, right after, I heard a sharp rustle, and this takeout bag from the night before, mine was a crumpled fast food bag on the table, just got knocked onto the floor, like a quick, impatient swipe. Then nothing. No more movement. No more sound. Just me sitting there, shaking, staring into the dark like it might happen again. I stayed awake for a while after that, maybe an hour, until my body finally caved and I fell asleep out of pure exhaustion. which honestly makes me feel even worse because it's like I'm so tired I'll sleep even when I'm terrified. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm imagining things, or if I've gotten into my own head, or if something is actually in this apartment with me. I just know the feeling changed, and last night felt like a warning. And I'm scared now. Like, for real scared. What would you do? So, this is one of those stories that still makes me feel a little tender when I talk about it. Back in April of 2019, I moved into this old house with a couple roommates. Wood floors that creaked, too many boxes that never fully got unpacked, that kind of place. I already had my own cats, but right before the move, I found this tiny street cat, skinny, sweet, unmistakably pregnant, hanging around near a busy stretch downtown. And I just couldn't leave her there. I kept thinking, if she has those babies out here, they're not going to make it. So I brought her with me. I took her to the vet, and the vet did that careful, professional thing where they're trying to prepare you gently. They told me it would probably be a few weeks before she gave birth. She went into labor 6 days later. I remember thinking, no, this is too soon. And it was. The kittens were so small they barely looked real, like nature had rushed and forgotten a few steps. The first kitten came out and I didn't understand what was happening fast enough. His mom didn't break the sack, and I didn't realize in time. That one still sits heavy in my chest when I think about it. The second kitten, this little fighter, came out in the same danger, and I caught it. I got him out, rubbed him, kept him warm, did everything with shaking hands and this desperate, stubborn hope. He was this 1-ounce preemie, so small he could fit in my palm like a fragile secret. But he lived. The third kitten wasn't in a sack at all. It was stillborn, and it was not fully formed. No fur, no bones you could really feel. Just heartbreaking in a way I don't even know how to describe without my voice going quiet. And then the fourth arrived later that night, when the house was asleep. Like she waited until the world got quieter. And that kitten, oh, her mom adored her. It was obvious. That baby got the special treatment, the cleaning, the nudging, the constant attention, the favorite. The two that didn't make it, we buried in the backyard. I wanted cremation. I wanted something official. Something that said, you mattered and you existed. But my partner at the time, Evan, thought it was too much for two tiny kittens that weighed less than a slice of bread. He said, we're going to live here a long time. They'll still be with us. At the time, I wasn't sure whether that comforted me or irritated me. Now I'm not so sure it wasn't true. The mom and the fourth kitten ended up getting adopted by a friend, Marisol, who really wanted a girl kitten and absolutely did not want a boy. So the fourth baby went with her, along with Mama Cat. The second kitten stayed with me. I named him Juniper, though everyone called him Junie. And he grew up into this big, slightly goofy 12-pound cat who, according to my vet, has a little bit of neurological weirdness, but honestly, he's pretty normal. He's just a little extra in the head, like his thoughts take the scenic route. Anyway, not long after Marisol adopted the mom and the fourth kitten, something started happening in the house. One night I woke up suddenly, that half-awake panic you get when something feels wrong before your brain even catches up. Junie usually slept beside me, and I had this weird habit with him. I'd reach out with my hand in the dark, and he'd press his forehead into my palm. It was our little "I'm here" signal. That night, I reached out and nothing. No warm fur, no solid little head. So I sat up fast and looked around the room, heart pounding. I saw him, or what I thought was him, curled in one of the square boxes on the cat tree. So I got up and walked over and reached into the box to pet him. I felt the back wall of the box. Empty. I froze there for a second because I genuinely thought my brain was glitching. Like, did I just hallucinate a cat? Then I found Junie asleep in the hallway, like he'd been there the whole time. And that should have been the end of it, right? Just a sleeping mistake, a trick of the dark. Except the first kitten, the one I lost, looked almost exactly like Junie. Same markings, same little face shape, like a copy with a softer outline. I told myself I was just grieving, that I was filling in gaps with wishful thinking. Then Evan said casually, like he was commenting on the weather, "Oh, I saw him too, the other one, on the cat tree." I remember staring at him like, "What do you mean you saw him too?" And Evan goes, "I looked at him and I just knew his name was Milo, like it dropped into my head." We didn't even argue about it. It was one of those things that felt strangely settled, like the name had always been his. And then there was the other kitten, the third one, the stillborn one, the one that didn't look like Junie at all. Evan said he'd seen that kitten a couple times too, but he couldn't place the name. He kept saying it felt like something that started with an L, like Luca or Lumi, something like that. And he wasn't sure if it felt like a boy or a girl. A couple days later, I had this dream that felt so vivid it made my skin prickle when I woke up. In the dream, I was in this little pet shop looking at a grown cat, full-sized, healthy, calm, who looked exactly like that third kitten would have if nature had finished the job. There was a tag on the cage door with her name. It said, Lark. When I woke up, I said the name out loud before I even sat up, like I didn't want it to slip away. I told Evan, and after that we just called her Lark, like that's what she had been waiting for, a name, a recognition. And here's the part that makes people give me that look. You know the look, the okay look. Visitors would come over and say things like, "Wait, where did the other cat that looks like Junie go?" Or, "I thought you had a second kitten." One of my roommates, Caleb, had friends over one night, hanging out in the craft room with the door closed. We didn't allow the cats in there because there were beads and thread and glue guns and all kinds of stuff that could hurt them. The rule was strict, no cats. But later, Caleb's friends were laughing and asking why we had secret cats, because apparently they felt cats brushing against their legs. They saw a small shape dart by. They swore something jumped onto the couch with them, light as a breath, and then disappeared. We searched the whole house, every time. Nothing. And the weirdest part is, it never felt scary. Not once. It felt familiar, protective, like someone checking the perimeter. I started thinking maybe Milo and Lark were still around because, I don't know, because their brother survived, because they wanted to make sure he stayed that way. And then there's this, the part I don't even bring up unless someone seems genuinely open-minded. Sometimes Junie and two of my other cats will sit in the same spot, facing the same direction, totally locked in. And then, at the exact same time, all three will tilt their ears back, or angle them toward the same corner, like they're listening to something I can't hear, like they're reacting to a presence moving through the room. Someone once told me, dead serious, that maybe those kittens could share space with my living cats, like borrow their bodies for a moment. I don't know if that's a thing. I'm not claiming it's a thing, so yeah. That's my story. 2 kittens that didn't make it, and somehow still feel like they never really left, like they're tucked into the corners of the house, like little warm shadows, like love refusing to go quietly, just hanging around to keep watch over the one who survived. So this happened back in 2011, but I remember it so clearly because it genuinely rattled me, and my friends and I talked about it for ages afterward, like we were going to solve it if we just replayed it enough times. At the time, I was living in my very first apartment by myself. It was one of those semi-basement units where the windows sit right at sidewalk level. To get to my front door, you had to walk down this narrow little staircase, like you were heading into a cellar. The building was old, creaky floors, chipped paint, that kind of old, and the neighborhood wasn't exactly comforting, especially at night. When I first moved in, I was paranoid all the time. I'd jump at every sound. If someone walked above me, I'd freeze and listen to every footstep like it was a warning. But after a while, I settled in. I started to like it, honestly. The place had these wide windows that let in a surprising amount of daylight, and when the sun hit the living room in the afternoon, it almost made you forget you were technically below ground. There was one part of the building that always made my skin crawl, though: the storage room across the hall from my unit. It was dark and damp and smelled weirdly metallic, like old pipes. I refused to go in there alone. If I had to grab something, I'd text a friend like, "Hey, can you come be my emotional support human while I get a box?" People laughed, but they still came. Anyway, the reason I ended up leaving was complicated. I'd gotten married really young, barely out of my teens, and the relationship ended fast. The divorce itself wasn't the scary part. It was the aftermath. My ex, Mason, wasn't violent or anything, but he had this habit of showing up when he felt like it, acting like boundaries were negotiable. I didn't want him knowing where I lived next. I just wanted space, quiet, a clean break. And weirdly, the moment I started packing to move, that's when things got unsettling. At first it was small, like I'd set my keys on the kitchen counter, always the same spot. Then the next morning I'd be tearing through my purse, checking the couch cushions, feeling ridiculous, and I'd find them somewhere that made no sense. On top of the bathroom sink, in the pantry. Once I found them on the windowsill behind a curtain I never opened. It wasn't just keys either. A little tin of cat treats I used daily, my MP3 player, a hair tie I knew I'd left on my nightstand. Things would vanish overnight and turn up later in places that felt wrong, like someone had put them there on purpose, as if to prove they could. I kept trying to explain it away. I told myself, "Okay, Harper, you're packing. You're stressed. You've got friends stopping by. You're scatterbrained." That sounded reasonable enough, so I clung to it. But then I started getting this sensation, this heavy, prickly feeling, that I wasn't alone in my own apartment. And the thing is, it didn't make sense. My blinds were always closed. The windows were at street level, sure, but you couldn't really see in unless you pressed your face right up to the glass, and I'd absolutely noticed that. Still, I'd catch myself turning around quickly, like I'd heard someone inhale behind me. Or I'd pause mid-task and just listen, because everything suddenly felt too quiet, like the room was holding its breath. I told myself it was nerves, moving jitters, the stress of wanting to disappear from someone's radar, all of it piled together. Then came the night I can't explain. I woke up suddenly, like the kind of wake-up where your heart is already racing before you even know why. For a split second, I thought one of my cats had jumped onto the bed and startled me. I blinked, trying to focus in the dark. And that's when I saw him. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. My whole body locked up so hard it felt like my bones went cold. I remember staring, trying to force my eyes to make sense of it. And then I did that thing where you blink hard and look again, like you're clearing sleep out of your vision. And when I looked back, it was gone. Just gone. No movement, no sound, no footsteps. Nothing. The end of the bed was empty, like it had always been. The cats were still asleep. The room was still. My blinds were still shut. And I lay there, wide-eyed, feeling like my apartment had turned into a different place entirely. The next day, I told my friends. Of course I did. And my friend Talia immediately went, "That's a ghost." Like it was the most obvious thing in the world. At the time, I didn't know what I believed. Honestly, I still don't. Part of me thinks maybe I was half dreaming. Maybe my brain stitched together shadows and stress and exhaustion into something terrifying. But another part of me, the part that remembers how real it looked, how present it felt, can't shake the thought that something was there. And what freaks me out the most isn't even the figure itself. It's the timing. Because the weirdness didn't start when I moved in. It started when I began leaving. So, I've been binging a bunch of paranormal stories lately, and it finally reminded me that I've got one of my own. Actually, more like a whole little collection of them. And they all happened in the creepiest apartment I've ever lived in, hands down. Okay, back in 2012, my partner, Evan, and I moved in together for the first time. I'd just moved to his state so we could live near his university, and because it was a college town, finding a place was brutal. Everything was either snapped up instantly, didn't allow pets, or required proof of employment, none of which I had yet. We did have a cat, though, so we ended up taking this apartment from a landlord who gave off major don't ask questions energy in a neighborhood where you very much did want to ask questions. We only saw the place once before signing, and I hated it immediately. Not because it was falling apart, it wasn't really. It was actually kind of spacious. But something about it made my skin feel tight, like my body was bracing for something it couldn't name. At the time, it was being worked on. No carpet yet, paint smell everywhere, tools and plastic sheeting, that whole deal. The emptiness made everything echo, and I told myself that was what felt so wrong. Also, the apartment sat partially below ground, so the living room windows and both bedroom windows were basically at sidewalk level. People walking past felt close. Too close. Then we moved in. The first night we came in after dark, I remember standing in the living room and staring down the hallway toward the back bedroom. And I felt this cold, slow dread for no reason I could explain. The layout was simple. Front door opens into the living room, hallway runs straight back, kitchen and bathroom on one side, a second, smaller bedroom on the other, and this little utility closet and laundry closet tucked along the hall. The big bedroom was at the very back, farther from the street, bigger, quieter. It should have been the more comfortable one. It wasn't. That back bedroom had this weird darkness. Like even if the lights were on in the hallway, the bedroom swallowed it. It always felt colder back there too, like the air never fully warmed up. And if I was alone in that room, I couldn't relax. I'd catch myself keeping my shoulders up like I was waiting for someone to tap me. I stopped sleeping well. I'd leave lamps on. I'd avoid getting up to use the bathroom at night unless Evan came with me. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But it was like my body refused to cross that hallway alone in the dark. A couple days after we moved in, I told Evan something that even I thought was bizarre. I said, "Our laundry closet freaks me out. I feel like one day I'm going to open it and see a man hanging in there." And I remember laughing right after, like, "Okay, brain, what are we doing?" Because why would you even think that? But the feeling was so strong I couldn't shake it. Anyway, the back bedroom got so bad that we eventually moved our bed into the smaller room closer to the front. And weirdly, immediately, I slept better. But then something else started ramping up. My sleep talking. I've always talked in my sleep. I'm one of those people who sits up with my eyes open and speaks like I'm in the middle of a conversation, and I don't remember a word of it in the morning. Evan wasn't used to that yet, so it really freaked him out. One night, I apparently sat straight up and snapped, "Stop it! That's not funny! Get those faces away from the window!" And Evan launches upright, because our bedroom window was right at street level. He thought someone was messing with us outside. He climbed up on the bed and yanked the curtain back like he was ready to fight. Nothing. Sidewalk empty. Just the glow of a street lamp and the occasional car. Middle of the night. I'm out cold. And suddenly I sit up again and say, really clearly, "Who is that?" Evan wakes up instantly, because again, neighborhood, ground level windows, all of that. And he's scanning the room, thinking someone broke in. He whispers, "What? Who?" And I say it again, "Who is that?" But I'm not looking at the window. I'm staring at the closed closet door. He tells me, "There's no one here. Go back to sleep." And I get irritated, like genuinely annoyed he can't see what I'm seeing. I go, "The little boy in the green coat. He's right there. He has a white rabbit." Evan said the way I said it wasn't dreamy or nonsensy. It was like I was describing something obvious, like I was pointing out a chair in the room and he was pretending not to see it. And then I just laid back down. Evan didn't sleep much after that. I don't blame him. Fast forward almost a year. By then, I wasn't struggling to sleep anymore, at least not the way I was in that back bedroom. But my sleep talking had turned into full-on sleep yelling sometimes, and Evan was exhausted from it. It was like whatever pressure had been sitting on me had shifted into my dreams. Then one night, I'm doing laundry, and I casually say, without even thinking about it, "God, I hate this closet. I still feel like I'm going to open it and see a man hanging in there." Evan just slowly turns and goes, "You said that when we first moved in." And I swear to you, I had completely forgotten. The words came out of my mouth like they were on autopilot. Hearing that I'd said the exact same thing months earlier made my stomach drop. A few nights later, I went to do laundry again. I opened the laundry door, and for a split second, the washer and dryer weren't there. It was just this dim little closet space, and there was a man hanging from above like he'd always been there. Flannel shirt, work jeans, heavy boots. I saw him for maybe half a heartbeat, and then the washer and dryer snapped back into place like a glitch corrected itself. I slammed the door so hard it hurt my hand and ran straight to Evan. I was shaking, trying to laugh it off because I didn't want to sound insane, but I was crying too, like my body was trying to pick one reaction and couldn't. Evan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Describe him." So I did. And halfway through, before I could even finish, he quietly filled in the rest of my description. Same clothes, same boots, because he'd seen him too. That was the point where my brain stopped trying to rationalize it. Because if it's just you can tell yourself you're tired, you're stressed, it's shadows. But when someone else confirms details you hadn't even said out loud yet, that hits different. That hits deep. We called a friend of Evan's, Marisol, who practiced Wicca and was one of the only people we knew who wouldn't immediately tell us we were being dramatic. She told us to come over. At her place, she did this whole cleansing ritual. Candles, herbs, murmured prayers, the works. She gave us a long strip of red fabric and told us to hang it above the front door as protection. She also gave us a small candle that had been lit from what she called a working flame, and she told us to use that to light any other candles or incense we burned in the apartment. And she told us to draw a specific symbol on the fuse box near the laundry area. So we did all of it. We hung the red fabric above the door. We marked the fuse box. And then, because I had an early shift the next morning, and I'm not proud of this, I told Evan, "Can you start the laundry and I'm going to bed?" I passed out immediately. Evan stayed up, procrastinating, because he was creeped out. He told me later he just sat there staring at the laundry door like it was going to breathe. And this is the part I didn't witness. This is entirely Evan's story. But I believe him, because he's the kind of person who hates exaggerating. He said the second he touched the doorknob with his free hand, the one not holding the candle, the laundry door started shaking. Not rattling gently, shaking like someone was on the other side slamming both fists into it. And he heard a man screaming. Not like through the walls, not like from outside. He said it sounded like it was coming from inside the closet. Meanwhile, I'm asleep in the room across the hall, completely unaware. No waking up, no hearing anything, nothing. Evan said it lasted a few seconds, long enough for him to freeze, long enough for him to feel his stomach drop, long enough for him to think, "Oh, I have made a mistake." Then everything stopped. Total silence. He waited. Then he opened the door, and according to him, the air inside the laundry closet felt normal, like the heaviness just lifted, like walking into a room after someone finally opens a window. From that night on, the laundry closet didn't scare me anymore, not like before. The nightmares calmed down. The apartment still never felt friendly exactly, but it stopped feeling like it was actively watching us. Evan still tells the story like it's a joke sometimes, like, "Remember when I accidentally exorcised the laundry closet?" But his eyes always do this tiny flicker when he says it, like part of him is still standing there in that hallway, candle in hand, listening to something scream in the dark. Hey, so before I get into the weird part, let me ground this in something really ordinary. Someone in my immediate family, my Aunt Marianne, worked in a British charity shop for over 2 decades. Just quietly showing up, sorting donations, steaming clothes, chatting with regulars, doing the everyday work that keeps places like that alive. And if you've never had charity shops where you live, here's the quick version. People donate clothes, books, household bits, whatever they don't need anymore, and the shop sells it cheap. The money goes back into the charity. A lot of the staff are volunteers. It's not glamorous, but it matters. And this particular shop, it mattered to a lot of people who passed through it. What most people didn't know was that it also had a reputation. Not fun, spooky story for Halloween reputation. More like, the building has moods, and sometimes it behaves like someone's still living in it. I'm telling you this straight. Nobody in my family was trying to build a legend, and there was never any benefit in pretending. Honestly, if anything, it was embarrassing to even talk about, until it happened too many times to shrug off. Anyway, the shop was in Norwich, a really old city in East Anglia, the kind of place where history doesn't feel buried. It feels stacked on top of itself. Medieval streets, plague history, old stone, old timber. The sort of city where you can walk past a building and think, that wall has watched centuries happen. The charity has moved since. Same road, bigger unit. But the old place, last I heard, was sitting empty. Now, the layout is important because a lot of what happened makes more sense when you can picture where people were standing. On the ground floor, you walked straight into the shop front, clothing rails on both sides, the till further in, then a long stretch of shelves with bric-a-brac. At the very back were the changing rooms, facing you like a dead end. Up the stairs, tight, old, winding stairs that only really fit one person at a time, you got to the first floor, staff only. On the right was this little box room you had to step up into, stacked with donated goods. Straight ahead was the sorting room, also up a step, where volunteers priced items and steamed clothes. Up again to the second floor, you could only turn right. This is where the staff room and toilets were. And then there was what we all ended up calling the top corridor, like a half level above the second floor. A short hallway with a fire exit on one side, the book room ahead, and another storage room used for extra stock and seasonal window displays. That last room, I hated it. I hated the feeling of it. It was the only place in the whole building where my stomach would drop the second I crossed the threshold. Oh, and there was supposedly a hidden basement too. The story was you could get to it by moving part of the till unit and finding this concealed door down into what used to be an old kitchen space, like early 1900s, maybe older. Big old range, table, that kind of thing. I never actually went down there. Part of me is glad. So, what was the activity like? It wasn't constant. It wasn't like a haunted house attraction where something happens on cue. It came in waves. Some months, nothing at all. Then you'd get a stretch where something happened almost every week, and the experienced volunteers would start quietly warning the new ones. Like, look, you might laugh now, but just don't panic if the building does something. And the new volunteers always laughed. Until they didn't. The strangest part was how normalized it became. People would hear something, go check, find nobody, and then just go back to tagging shirts like it was a dripping tap. The main things people reported fell into a few patterns. First, shadow figures. Customers sometimes came out of the changing rooms saying they'd seen someone, like a person-shaped shadow, inside or just behind the curtain. One woman, apparently, got so shaken she was nearly in tears, insisting someone was in there with her. Marianne once closed up, locked the doors, and while she was finishing up downstairs, she saw a shadowy shape near the back, by the bric-a-brac, in front of the changing rooms. Just a human outline where no one should be. Another time she came down the stairs and had that awful sense of being followed, then actually saw something behind her on the staircase, moving the way a person moves. And volunteers reported the same kind of thing upstairs too, especially in the box room and that top storage room near the books. A few people even claimed they'd seen someone through the front window, when the shop was clearly empty and still locked, before the manager arrived. Second, sounds. This was probably the most common. Footsteps, heavy, purposeful steps, when no one was there. Doors opening and closing, including doors that were locked. It was especially noticeable after hours, when the shop was quiet and you could hear the building settling. Except these weren't settling noises. These sounded like someone moving with intention. Most of the time, it seemed to come from the second floor and that top corridor, like the fire door being pushed open and then shut. But that door was secured. People would go check, and it would be locked exactly as it should be. Sometimes it happened right near you, too. You'd be in the sorting room and hear the unmistakable sound of someone stepping into the hallway, like they were about to come in. And then you'd look up, and there'd be nobody. No movement, no light shift, nothing. The staircase was a hot spot as well, like hearing someone coming down quickly, and your body bracing for a person to appear. And then nothing. Third, touching. This one really bothered people. Customers in the changing rooms would sometimes complain that someone had brushed them or touched them through the curtain, like a hand, a tap, a little push. And yes, you could argue maybe someone could have done it, except the volunteers were trained to watch the changing rooms closely to prevent shoplifting. The changing rooms were in direct line of sight of the till, and you needed a little disc or token for each item you tried on. Staff were paying attention. When people said it happened, there often just wasn't anyone nearby who could have done it. Staff got it too. Taps on the shoulder, a touch on the arm, sometimes enough to make someone spin around expecting to see a coworker right behind them. It seemed to happen most upstairs, especially in the box room and that top storage area. And then there was the fourth category, the one nobody likes admitting out loud because it sounds the most ridiculous. Poltergeist-type stuff. Books opening by themselves. pages flipping like someone was thumbing through them, books sliding or even launching off shelves in the book room, boxes shifting when nobody was touching them, furniture nudging out of place, things downstairs falling or being knocked over when there was no obvious reason, sometimes with enough force that it didn't feel like a simple wobble, doors slamming. And the creepiest part? Staff would hear what sounded like big items being dragged around in a room nobody was in. And when they opened the door, everything would look perfectly normal. Nothing moved. No sign of disturbance. Just silence, like the building was holding its breath. Now, my own experiences. By the time I had them, this stuff had already been a regular topic in my family. So I grew up hearing it the way you'd hear stories about a difficult neighbor. Half believed, half filed away, always told with a slightly careful tone. My first experience happened when I was little, maybe 8 or 9. My dad had taken me and my brother out and bought us these cheap toy weapons, plastic swords, one of those little bow and arrow sets. And afterward, we went to the charity shop after closing to pick up Marianne. The shop was locked, quiet. The adults were upstairs in the office on the second floor. I was on the first floor, messing around with my toys, feeling like I had the whole building to myself. And those stairs, listen, those stairs were steep, narrow, twisting, the kind of stairs where you need to pay attention. I didn't. I took a wrong step and pitched forward, and I should have gone down, hard, head first, the kind of fall that can really hurt a kid. But I didn't fall. It's hard to explain without sounding insane, but I felt something invisible, grab my legs and hold me. I ended up stuck upside down, like my lower half was anchored in midair. I remember my arms flailing and my face hot with panic, screaming because my brain couldn't understand why gravity had just stopped working. And I remember seeing my feet, rigid in place, and the stairwell ceiling beyond them. My dad came running down and grabbed me. Later, he told me the strangest part wasn't even my screaming. It was that he saw no one holding me up. Just his kid somehow balanced in a way that shouldn't be possible. And I wasn't some nimble little gymnast. I was clumsy, honestly. If I'd been alone, I think I would have convinced myself I imagined it. But there were adults there. People saw it. My family has this long-running idea of guardian angels, moments where someone gets saved from something that should have gone badly. And they've always counted that as one of those moments. Whether it was connected to the shop, I don't know. Because for a long time, the shop didn't feel personal. Most of what happened there felt random, almost like echoes repeating. Until the second time. Fast forward a few years, early 2000s. I was a teenager, going to college in Norwich. On days Marianne worked, I'd sometimes meet her at the shop after closing. We'd sit upstairs and wait for my dad to pick us up. Just the two of us in this locked building, the street outside quieting down. And around that time, it had been calm. Not much to report. No big stories lately. So one evening, we're sitting in the office, chatting, and I ask casually if anything odd has happened recently. And Marianne goes, "Honestly, it's been quiet for ages." And I don't know why I did this. Maybe I'd been watching too much late-night ghost TV. Maybe I just wanted to prove to myself it was nonsense. But I got cocky. I actually called out into the building. Something like, "If anyone's here, let us know." That kind of stupid challenge you only make when you think nothing will answer. And almost immediately, a crash from the top corridor, like something large falling. Then footsteps, fast, coming down from that top level to the second floor, running right past the open doorway of the office. We both looked, saw nothing. Then the footsteps kept going, down the stairs, full speed. Then a slam from the first floor, the sorting room door closing hard. And after that, it sounded like someone was tearing the sorting room apart. Bangs, scrapes, shifting, like a person throwing boxes around in anger. Marianne went white because her first thought was practical. Oh my God, we've locked ourselves in with someone. A shoplifter. Someone hiding. And because I was 17 and apparently expendable, she sent me down to confront them. I was terrified. I'm not a fighter. I hate confrontation. But I also didn't want to believe it was anything else. Because if it wasn't a person, then what was it? So I went down. And as I descended the stairs, I could still hear the chaos in that sorting room. It sounded real. It sounded physical. I reached the door, pushed it open, and the moment I stepped inside, everything stopped. The room was square, one entrance, no windows to climb out of, no second door. Nowhere a person could have gone without passing me. And nothing was disturbed. No boxes tipped, no rails moved, no piles on the floor. It was like the sound had been playing for us, and the second I entered, someone hit pause. I can't explain that. I still can't. And then the third experience. This one was quick, but it was the one that made my stomach drop because it was so visible. Another evening, I'm downstairs with Marianne, about to lock up. The shop is quiet, lights still on, nothing dramatic. We're doing the last little check before leaving, and a handbag, resting on a shelf, suddenly flew off. Not slid, not toppled down the front. Flew outward into the room, landing a good meter or two away like it had been flicked or thrown. We both just stared at it. Because there's a huge difference between something falling and something being sent. And I've also seen books come off shelves in there too. Again, not the gentle, gravity did its thing kind of fall. More like an interruption. Like the air itself got impatient. So that's the story. A small, ordinary charity shop that most people walked past without a second glance. Quiet volunteers, donated jumpers, old paperbacks. Sitting inside a building that sometimes behaved like it was sharing the space with someone you couldn't see. And if you're listening to this thinking, okay, but what was it? Who was it? I wish I could tell you. All I can say is, people didn't go looking for it. It came to them. And after enough years, enough footsteps, enough taps, enough doors that shouldn't open, enough objects moving like they had opinions, you stop asking whether it's real, and you start asking what it wants. Okay, so let me set the scene, because the place matters. Right on the edge where Howard County turns into Carroll County in Maryland, there used to be this old tuberculosis sanatorium called Henryton State Hospital. It dated back to the early 1900s, and it had this heavy kind of history. Originally meant to treat black tuberculosis patients, though a lot of people who grew up around there will tell you it felt less like treatment and more like being tucked away where nobody had to look at you. That's the feeling you get even just hearing about it. And in front of where the hospital sat up on the hill, there's the Patapsco River, wide, shallow, usually calm. In summer, you can kind of pick your way across it if you don't mind wet shoes. But in winter, forget it. You have to hike down to this old railroad tunnel, still active, still humming, and cross over there, then trek back through the woods toward the base of the hill. That hill is important. Remember the hill, because for some reason, that hill has a weird relationship with car keys. So, first time. This was back when my partner, let's call him Evan, was a senior in high school. It was a brutally cold Saturday. Snow on the ground, the kind that squeaks when you step on it. Evan and two of his friends, Dylan and Marcus, decide it would be a genius idea to go explore Henryton. They do the whole thing. Hike to the tunnel, cross near the river, climb around the abandoned buildings for a few hours. They're teenagers, so, yeah, they're goofing around, acting brave, smoking a little weed, daring each other to go into darker rooms. That kind of day. And when they finally make it back to the car, it's already getting dark. And Evan pats his pockets, and he goes, guys? No keys. They check the ground. They check the car. They check every pocket again, like the keys are going to magically appear the second time. Nothing. The last place Evan remembers holding them? The base of the hill, right where the path starts to climb up toward the hospital. But here's the problem. No flashlights, snow everywhere, and that hike back isn't just go back. It's cross the river area again and cover ground in the dark, in the cold, half-stoned, in the woods. Not smart. So Marcus, who's wearing these thick snow pants, goes, "I'll do it. I'll just wade across and check the trail." Which is insane, by the way. It's freezing. But he does it, and he finds the keys. Pretty quickly. Not buried, not off to the side. Right in the middle of the path at the bottom of the hill, like someone set them there. They all shrugged it off. Teenagers lose stuff. You get distracted. You drop things. When Evan told me that story years later, I laughed and said, "Yeah, you guys were just high." Like, case closed. I didn't even entertain anything paranormal. Not even a little. Then came the second time. A few years later, around October, right before Halloween, Evan and I decide we're going to hike up there together. I'm thinking, spooky vibes, crisp air, little adventure. We'll take pictures, poke around, leave before it gets too late. We hadn't checked anything online because we're apparently allergic to planning, and we didn't realize the place had been demolished a few years earlier. Like, fully torn down. On the hike, Evan retells the key story, and we're laughing about it. But I'll admit, hearing it out there, with the woods quiet and the river nearby, it made me weirdly aware of my own keys. So I do this very responsible thing. I clip my keys, carabiner and all, to Evan's backpack strap. Tight. Secure. Not going anywhere. Then we get close to, the base of the hill. And I don't know how to explain this without sounding dramatic, but I suddenly felt watched. Not like, oh, there might be another hiker. More like that prickly feeling on your neck when you realize you're alone, but you don't feel alone. I told myself, it's just the story in your head. It's October. You're doing the spooky thing. Stop. And then, out of nowhere, my keys start jingling. Not a tiny shake, like a deliberate rattle, like someone had their fingers on them. I look at Evan like, "Are you messing with me?" And he looks genuinely confused, like he hadn't even moved. The keys keep rattling for a second longer. Evan reaches over, unclips them, and sticks them in his pocket like, "Okay, nope." And we keep walking up. We reach the top and, no hospital, just a clearing, trees, broken bits of foundation. It was honestly depressing. Like the land itself was trying to pretend nothing ever happened there. So we turn around and start heading back down, and we're almost at the bottom of the hill when I see something on the trail. A single car key, just sitting there. I laugh because it feels like a joke. Like, wow, someone else did the Henryton key thing. Evan bends down, picks it up, and holds it up like, "Hey, isn't this yours?" And my stomach dropped, because it was mine. And I immediately go, "That's impossible. They're in your pocket." So Evan pulls my keys out of his pocket. And sure enough, the car key is missing. Now listen, my keys are not flimsy. They're on a carabiner. The car key was attached to a key ring that doesn't just come undone. You'd have to twist and work it off. And there it was, detached, alone, sitting in the center of the trail at the bottom of the hill. Evan just goes, really quietly, "This is exactly where Marcus found mine." And that same watched feeling rushed back so hard, I felt kind of dizzy. I put the key back on the ring with shaking fingers, and the whole walk back to the car, I held my keys like they were going to sprout legs and run. And the weird part? Even dangling from my hand, they didn't make a sound again. Not a single jingle. For a long time after that, I tried to rationalize it. I did the whole coincidence thing. I told myself maybe the ring was looser than I thought. Maybe my key snagged on fabric. Maybe I didn't clip it as securely as I believed. But deep down, it didn't sit right. Then came the third time, and this is the one that finally snapped something in me. Evan and I decide to go back one more time, partly because it's actually a beautiful hike, but mostly because we wanted to test it. Like, okay, if something up there messes with keys, let's see. And we were prepared, hyper-aware, paying attention. No casual clipping, no absent-minded pockets. The hike out was normal, quiet, a little overgrown, branches and thorny bushes grabbing at our sleeves. The kind of trail where you feel like you're trespassing even if you're not. And then we hit the base of the hill, and that dread hit me again. Instant. Like stepping into a colder patch of air. I kept looking behind us, expecting to see, I don't know, a person, a deer, anything. Nothing. Evan had his keys in his pocket, but he did this thing on purpose. He left the top of the keychain just visible, like bait. Like, if you're going to do it, do it. We walk up the hill. Nothing grabs them. Nothing jingles. But the deeper we got, the stranger I felt. Foggy, dreamy, disoriented, like my brain wasn't fully in my skull. And I didn't say anything because I didn't want to influence him. We reach the clearing. We stand there a minute. It's quiet in that unsettling way quiet can be, where you realize you're listening too hard. We start walking back down. At the bottom of the hill, Evan goes, half joking, "Well, guess the ghosts are over it." And he shoves his keys deeper into his pocket like, "See? Nothing." Then we wander along the train tracks for a bit, trying to find another trail Evan remembered. We don't find it. So we turn back, and I'm walking a few paces behind him. And we're not even on the hill trail anymore. We're near it, but not on it. And that's when I see it. Out of the corner of my eye, Evan's little headphone case, attached to his keychain, starts to rise out of his pocket. At first I think, oh, his pocket snagged weird. Movement, friction. But then it keeps coming. Slowly, smoothly. And the rest of the keychain follows, inch by inch. And here's the part that makes my skin crawl even now. The keys didn't fall like they should have. They didn't dangle down naturally as gravity took over. The chain looked taut, like something invisible had a grip on it and was pulling straight upward, trying to slide the keys out without making it obvious. Like it was being careful. Like it didn't want Evan to notice. I just blurted, without thinking, "Your keys are coming out of your pocket." Evan stops, looks down, and then looks at me with these huge eyes, like he already knows what I'm going to say before I say it. He yanks them back into his pocket, and we both just stand there for a second, silent. And the creepiest part? It only happened right there, right in the vicinity of that hill. Not on the rest of the hike, not before, not after. 3 separate trips, 3 separate moments, same general area, same weird pattern, keys moved, keys missing, keys pulling themselves out like someone was messing with them. I don't call myself a skeptic anymore, because once? Fine. Twice? Weird. But 3 times? 3 times feels like something, or someone, still lingering around that place, even after the buildings are gone. Like the hill kept the memory. So, if you ever find yourself hiking near where Henryton State Hospital used to be, enjoy the view, take pictures, but for the love of God, keep a close eye on your keys. Okay, so I just finished the episode, and I need to talk about it, because I genuinely can't stop thinking about the first half, especially the whole method that Marin and Jace use, and then the uncut, debunking footage on top of that. Like, this is one of those situations where it either cracks open something huge about the paranormal, spirits, mediums, all of it, or it's another example of people putting on a performance because it benefits them. And I'm trying really hard to stay in the middle, open-minded, but not naive. First, quick sidebar about the Robert Dahl stuff, because the comments under that segment were wild. A bunch of people were basically like, "Don't claim the bad energy," or "It doesn't like being filmed," and "It can curse you through video." And honestly, I'm fine so far. But it's one of those legends where if you go hunting for real comments, good luck. Half of them feel like copy-pasted warnings from the same 3 ghost forums. Now, about the house itself. The new owners definitely seem more interested in the attraction side than the historical authenticity. Which, I get it. If you own a famous haunted location, you're going to market it. But it does make me skeptical when they confidently talk about already having tons of evidence, and then, conveniently, Marin and Jace show up with the most dramatic phenomenon imaginable. They also changed some furniture, which is a small thing, but it bothered me more than it should have. If I owned a place known for its history, I'd be obsessed with keeping everything as close to the original experience as possible. Tiny nitpick, but still. And the flickering lights? Look, it's an old house. Old wiring can be a mess. I live in an older place too. Lights flicker. That's not automatically a ghost making a statement. That's sometimes just electricity doing what old electricity does. Now, the big thing. Marin and Jace. They claim they can communicate with spirits, specifically a spirit named Evelyn, who the owner had mentioned earlier as being a calm, friendly presence. Their method is what got me, because it's so oddly specific. They have to be touching skin to skin. And apparently, it can even work if someone stands between them, as long as the chain of touch stays unbroken. The moment they make contact, the knocking starts, immediately. And it keeps going even when they're not actively asking anything. And I'm not exaggerating when I say, this is the most compelling evidence I've seen on one of these YouTube paranormal investigations in a long time. They do the whole system. 1 knock for yes, 2 for no, and then spelling using the alphabet with knocks landing on letters. And the thing is, a lot of it feels seamless. It doesn't sound like someone across the room tapping. It doesn't look like a crew member doing something off camera. The answers are often weirdly accurate. There was even a moment where the knocks seemed to lag, like whoever, or whatever was responding, got ahead of itself and had to correct. That kind of imperfect moment is the stuff that makes it feel real. Because if you were faking it, wouldn't you keep it smooth? Wouldn't you avoid a mistake? They also brought up personal stuff, details about Riley and Noah, the investigators, and their producer Miles. That's the part that made the room go quiet, because you can feel everyone thinking, okay, now hold on. And to their credit, they did try to rule out simple tricks. They checked below the room, they checked above it, they moved locations within the house, and it still happened. So yeah, it's intense. And I'm not saying that to be a buzzkill. I want this to be genuine. I'm just not willing to turn off my brain because something gave me chills. Here's what starts poking holes for me. For one, if you run a popular haunted attraction, you're already in the business of mystery. Even if you're not outright lying, the incentive to enhance things is right there. And Marin and Jace have a background that raises my eyebrows. They've been connected to paranormal TV circles and regional unusual phenomena groups, stuff where reputation and attention really matter. That doesn't prove anything, but it does create bias. If your identity is built around being the people who can do this, of course you're going to protect that narrative. The debunking footage also didn't really seal the deal for me. It mostly showed that it wasn't some random person off to the side knocking, but it didn't explain what it was, or eliminate the possibility of a trick happening closer to them. A few specific things I couldn't stop noticing. The knocking sound is strangely consistent, like it sounds similar on different surfaces. Even when they move onto gravel outside, it still has that same signature knock. Marin leads the entire flow. She finishes words quickly, she controls the pacing, and in the uncut footage, she guesses a full word when only the first letter was confirmed, like she's steering the outcome. The knocks rarely respond directly to the investigators unless Marin and Jace are the ones guiding it. It's like the spirit only cooperates through them. Marin stays locked onto Evelyn even outside of the house, which feels odd if Evelyn is supposed to be tied to the location. Distance is hard to judge because audio can be deceptive. Sometimes it sounds close, then suddenly farther, and I don't know what to make of that. And the rubber glove test? That's a big one. When the gloves stop it, they explain it as energy being blocked. Maybe, or maybe it's because the method requires a certain kind of contact for a certain kind of physical trick. Also, Marin made a comment joking about them being able to go on dates, like it's normal. But if this starts every time they touch, wouldn't that be incredibly annoying? Imagine holding hands and constant knocking begins. That's either a lifetime of chaos, or the phenomenon is more on command than they admit. The park scene, though, yeah, not convincing. That whole outside segment felt like the weakest part by far. They supposedly connect with a spirit named Tess, described as a teacher who died near a school close to the park. But the information didn't feel impossible to know. It felt like the kind of thing someone could find with one quick search, especially if you're local or you've done this before. Two moments stood out as, wait, what? To me. One, when they learned Tess was a teacher, Riley asks if the park used to be a school, and Marin almost says yes, then abruptly pivots to no. It's subtle, but it's the kind of slip that makes you wonder what she was about to commit to. And two, Marin seemed to assume the spirit was female before that had been established. None of that is a smoking gun. It's just enough little weirdness that the mood shifts from holy crap to okay, slow down. And honestly, the method itself is still murky. And the randomness is inconsistent depending on the location. In one setting, the knocks continue constantly, even during casual conversation. In another, they only happen when direct questions are asked. That inconsistency could mean different spirits. Or it could mean the method is being controlled more than they're admitting. Overall, I'm stuck in that frustrating place where I'm fascinated and skeptical at the same time. I want it to be real. I really do. But personal details about families are often accessible. If they had shown more of the producer's session, something harder to research, more specific, that would have helped. So for now, I'm calling it this. Incredibly interesting, not fully proven, and absolutely worth watching with a clear head. And I hope the next part brings clarity, because if they start bringing in bigger, more influential guests, it could either mean they're tightening the investigation, or it could mean they're building a bigger show. Either way, I'll be watching. Hey, so I figured I'd share this because it finally boiled over just the other weekend. My dad's always been the tough, no-mystery type. The kind of man who hears the word ghost and snorts like you've just told him the moon is made of cheese. Rubbish, he'd say. Absolute rubbish. Sometimes he'd even get properly irritated if the topic hung around too long. My mum, on the other hand, total opposite. She's one of those people who just knows there's more out there. She's told me stories over the years, little moments she swore were real, things she saw, things she felt. And every single time she brought one up, Dad would shut it down like a door slamming. No debate, no curiosity, just anger, like the subject itself offended him. Then, years ago, This was around 2016, I think. My aunt came to stay with Mum for a bit while she wasn't well. Her name was Elaine. She was always warm and chatty, the type who leaned in when she told a story, like she wanted you to feel it with her. One evening, we somehow got onto the whole paranormal thing. Mum was talking. Elaine was nodding along, chiming in, even getting a bit excited about it all. And I remember thinking, how are they both so open to it, but Dad's like a brick wall? So I asked Elaine straight out, half joking, half curious. How come you and Mum can talk about this stuff so easily, but Dad acts like it's poison? And Elaine just stared at me, genuinely confused. She went, "What do you mean? Your dad isn't a skeptic." I laughed, like she must be mistaken. But she shook her head, real serious now, and said something like, "No, he's not a skeptic because we went through something. Together." I remember the way my stomach dropped, because suddenly it wasn't a silly conversation anymore. I leaned forward and asked, "What do you mean? What happened?" And her whole face changed. She closed right up. She told me, quietly, that she'd promised my dad she'd never talk about it. Not to anyone. And if I wanted to know, I'd have to ask him myself. So I did. Not right away, because my parents had split up by then, and Dad was living a good distance away, and I didn't see him all that often. But the next time I had him on his own, I brought it up gently. Just, "Elaine said you two experienced something once. What was it?" He didn't even look at me properly, just waved it off like a fly. "It was nothing," he snapped. And that was it. Over the years, I tried again, a few different times, different moods, different settings, thinking maybe I'd catch him on a softer day. But every time it was the same. A sharp brush off, a flash of temper, like I'd poked a bruise he didn't want touched. And then last weekend he came to stay at my place. We went out, just the two of us, to a little pub nearby. We had dinner, had a couple pints, and for hours honestly, it was lovely. We were laughing, telling old stories, talking about people we missed. It felt easy, normal. And the thing is, Elaine passed away a few years ago now. So whatever happened, whatever she and Dad shared, she took her side of it with her. And I realized, if I didn't ask my dad again, I might never know. So I did. I tried to keep it light, like I wasn't cornering him. I said something like, "Dad, do you remember that thing Elaine said? About the night you two experienced something?" And it was like someone flicked a switch inside him. Instant anger. Sharp, hot, immediate. Right there in public, after we'd just been laughing our heads off, he suddenly looked ready to explode. It honestly stunned me. I put my hands up like, all right, calm down. I'm only asking because Elaine wouldn't tell me." His face went tight, then softer, like he was fighting himself, and he said, "Sorry, I shouldn't have snapped at you. Then, I really don't want to talk about that night." So I didn't interrupt. I just waited. He stared down at his drink for a second, like he was looking at something under the surface. And then he said, in this low voice I'd never heard from him before, "I've spent most of my life trying to forget what I saw, and I don't want it back in my head." And that was it. No details, no explanation, just that. And the thing that stayed with me, the part I can't shake, is my dad is not a man who scares easily. He used to work doors. Even now, in his late 70s, he's still built like a wardrobe and carries himself like someone who's always been able to handle whatever comes at him. But in that moment, sitting across from me in that pub, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Not the kind you laugh off, not the kind you put on for drama. Real fear. And honestly, that frightened me more than any ghost story ever could. So, I haven't really talked about this much, but I've had a handful of intense, ugly, impossible to forget supernatural experiences in my life. Stuff that messed with me for years. And then, almost like someone flipped a switch, it stopped about 3 years ago. But even though things have been quiet, it kind of changed me. I'm the type of person who notices the tiny shifts in a room, a sound that's one beat off, a feeling that doesn't belong. I don't go looking for it. I just can't not notice. Anyway, my partner Maya and I live in a 2-story townhouse, bedrooms upstairs. And right inside the bedroom door, on the left, there's this old freestanding full-length mirror. Heavy thing. Oak frame, a little scratched up. The kind of mirror that feels like it has a history even when you don't know what it is. I got it more than 20 years ago when my buddy Trevor was clearing out his dad's place. He was like, "Do you want this?" And I said sure, because it was solid wood and I was broke and young and thought it looked cool. Our bed sits in the middle of the room, and the mirror is across the floor from my side, close enough that if I open my eyes at night, it's right there in the dark. We've got 2 dogs, but our older one, Daisy, usually sleeps with us. She's been around that mirror her whole life. Never cared about it, not even once. And then last night, well, technically this morning, I wake up because I hear this low growl. That deep, serious kind. Not the "I'm annoyed" growl, the "something is wrong" growl. I squint at the clock. 2:47 a.m. Daisy is sitting upright on the bed like a statue, ears forward, head lifted, eyes locked on the mirror. For a second, I'm just confused. Like, maybe she's dreaming. Maybe she heard something outside. So I reach down and give her a little tap on the hip, whispering, "Hey, stop. It's okay." She doesn't even flinch. She lowers her head a little, but she keeps staring into the mirror like it's the only thing in the world. Then, within maybe a minute, she starts up again, growling harder. And this time she slowly slides forward on her belly, creeping toward the edge of the bed. And her growls start turning into these short, sharp barks, like she's warning something. And I swear to you, in that moment my brain runs through 1,000 possibilities all at once. Is someone in the house? Did I forget to lock something? Is there something in the room? Is the mirror about to fall? But the way she's acting, it doesn't feel like a normal noise or a mouse in the wall. It feels focused. Her growling gets louder, the barks get louder, and then she carefully stands up, climbs down off the bed, and walks toward the mirror like she's approaching a threat. She stops about 3 feet away and lies flat on her stomach with her front legs stretched out, head pointed straight at it, growling through her teeth. That's when I get up. I'm trying to stay calm, but my chest is tight, and my skin is doing that prickly thing. I flick on the lights, every light I can reach, and the room looks completely normal, completely boring. Clothes on a chair, the same shadows, the same oak-framed mirror doing nothing but reflecting a lit-up bedroom. I check the clock again. 3:06 a.m. Daisy follows me downstairs like she's on duty. I figure maybe she needs water, or to go outside, or maybe she's sick. Nope. She doesn't want food, doesn't want water, doesn't want to go out, won't even take a treat, which is basically unheard of for her. So we go back upstairs. It's around 3:15 by then. Nothing. Just a mirror. And Daisy is watching the entire time. Quiet now, but alert. Eventually she seems to settle, like the moment passed. So I turn off the lights, get back under the covers, and she hops up into her usual spot. Same side, same position, facing the mirror. And I don't sleep for a while. I just lie there listening to the house. Every little creak, every distant pipe sound, every tiny settling noise, waiting for, I don't even know what, something to explain it. But the rest of the night stays quiet. No more growling, no barking, nothing. Then this morning I go downstairs to make coffee, still feeling kind of weird about it, and I notice something that makes my stomach dip a little. The doors to the small laundry closet, both of them, are wide open. And listen, that could be nothing. Could be Maya. Could be me. Could be that they didn't latch all the way. I'm not claiming I caught some big paranormal proof moment, but I know they were closed when we went back upstairs around 3. So, yeah. After I typed it all out, I kind of laughed at myself, because on paper it doesn't sound like much. It's not a dramatic horror movie scene, but I'm telling you, being jolted awake in the middle of the night to your dog growling at an old mirror like something is standing there, that is absolutely undeniably terrifying when you're the one in the room. Okay, so my wife and I have been in this house for like almost a year now, about 11 months, and honestly, it's a normal house. Nothing creepy, nothing obviously wrong with it. The only thing is, the last owner was kind of a mess. You know the type, half-finished little repairs, old smoke smell that clung to the garage like it had been marinating there for years. The sort of upkeep that's basically good enough, I guess. So at first we're settling in, everything's fine. And then one day, I walk by and notice the back garage door is just wide open. Which is weird because that door stays locked, always. It's one of those locks you can only turn from the inside, so when it's locked, it's locked. Immediately we're like, oh my God, someone broke in. We check everything. Tools? Still there. Boxes? Untouched. Nothing is missing. And the door from the garage into the house? Still locked, still solid, no damage, no signs anyone tried to mess with it. So we're standing there in the garage like, okay, then what was that? And then it happens again. Not every day, not even every week, but often enough that it starts to feel like this annoying little glitch in reality. We'd go out, find the back garage door open, and every single time we'd do the same routine. Inspect the lock, check the frame, test it, shove our shoulders against it, slam it a few times just to make sure it catches. Locked. Still locked. We even joked about it like, wow, guess the house is just dramatic. Or, maybe we've got a secret ghost who needs fresh air. But tonight is the first time I've felt that cold, prickly feeling in my chest that makes you stop laughing. Because I recently had surgery, pretty major, and they sent me home with pain meds, hydrocodone. Nothing fancy, just the kind you keep on the nightstand so you don't have to stumble around at 3 a.m. half awake. I had a little bottle beside the bed. I know I did. And I know there were around a dozen left because I'd stopped taking them the last couple days. I was trying to tough it out. So earlier, my wife, Mara, goes to hand me one because I'm hurting. And she pauses, staring into the bottle, and she goes, "Have you been taking these?" And I'm like, "No, why?" And she just looks up at me, eyes all narrowed, totally serious, and says, "Because there are only 3 left." 3. That was the moment my brain did that thing where it tries to be logical, but it's also doing math at the same time and getting more and more panicked. Because I didn't take them. I know I didn't. And Mara didn't take them. She doesn't touch that stuff. She's the kind of person who won't even take a Tylenol unless she's basically dying. So we're standing in the bedroom doing this quiet inventory of reality, and right as we're trying to make it make sense, she says, "Also, the back garage door was open again today." And it's like the two things click together in the worst way. Because here's the other part. There's an attic access panel in the garage, and there's another one in the hallway near our bedroom. And I've joked for months, like, haha, spooky show voice. What if someone lives up there? You know, because we watch those insane documentaries where somebody's secretly squatting in a crawl space and stealing food and watching the family sleep. It was always a joke, until it wasn't. So now I'm replaying everything in my head. All the times we found that door open, how it always seemed locked, how we'd slam it and double-check it and swear to each other it couldn't be the wind, how nothing looked out of place, but also how we weren't exactly looking for subtle things, because why would we? And now I'm sitting here thinking, or something about that door isn't what we think it is. And then there are my missing pills. And I keep going back to this one thought that I don't even want to say out loud because it makes me feel ridiculous and scared at the same time. What if someone has been here the whole time and we just haven't noticed? Because there is no good reason for medication to disappear. None. And there is no good reason for a locked door to be open. So yeah, that's where I'm at, trying to decide if I'm spiraling or if something is genuinely, seriously wrong. So, I've told this story a bunch of times, and somehow it never gets less unsettling. Before I was even old enough to remember her, my grandmother, my mom's mother, died of throat cancer. By the end, it had changed her voice completely. It wasn't just hoarse. Her voice got deep, rough, raspy, like it was dragged up from somewhere painful. That detail matters later. My mom and her weren't especially close, but grief doesn't always follow logic. After my grandmother passed, my mom sank into this heavy depression that, honestly, she never fully climbed out of. And she carried this guilt, like a stone in her pocket, for not visiting more, for slowly drifting from that side of the family. Like distance alone was a kind of betrayal. Years went by. Our life was normal. No creepy shadows in corners, no weird sounds, nothing that felt haunted. But my mom once told us something that stuck with me. There was a time she felt so hopeless she didn't want to live anymore. And during that time, she had this dream where her mother's spirit came for her, like she was being invited to leave. But my mom said she refused. She told her, "No, I have kids. I'm staying." When I was around 9, my mom dipped hard again. Depression came back like a tide, and insomnia moved in with it. She was a seamstress, so when she couldn't sleep, she'd sew. Fixing hems, mending tears, altering clothes, anything to keep her hands busy. And if you've ever heard a sewing machine going full speed at 3 in the morning, you know it's not exactly soothing. Some nights I'd wake up from the clatter and whir, shuffle down the hallway half asleep, and go to the bathroom. One of those nights, I passed her room and saw her sitting at the machine like always, but there was an extra chair pulled up beside her, angled like someone was supposed to be sitting there. I remember pausing and asking, all innocent and blunt like kids are, "Why do you have a chair there if nobody's using it?" She didn't answer, not even a glance, just kept sewing. I shrugged it off, because what else do you do at that age? You go back to bed and let grown-up weirdness stay in grown-up spaces. But months passed, and it kept happening. The chair would appear beside her while she worked late at night. My dad and my sisters got worried, and, honestly, irritated too. It's hard to be compassionate at 3 a.m. when a machine is rattling the walls. Still, we knew it was how she coped. Watching someone you love unravel slowly is its own kind of helpless. One evening after dinner, we were all sitting around the table, me, my sisters, my dad, and my oldest sister, Mariana, brought it up like it was a joke. "Mom, why do you keep setting a chair next to you when you sew? Like you're hosting company?" We all laughed, not in a cruel way, more like trying to lighten the heaviness that had been sitting with us for months. My mom just smiled, a real smile, and she said, very calmly, "Because my mother visits sometimes. I leave her somewhere comfortable to sit." The table went quiet for half a second, like everyone's brain collectively hit a speed bump. But then, we didn't argue. We didn't challenge it. Because for the first time in a long time, she looked happy. And when you've been watching someone sink, You cling to whatever makes them float. Winter came. Our house was old and drafty, and we didn't have proper heating, so we bought those portable space heaters, one for each room. One night, my mom mentioned something small and strange, like it wasn't even worth noting. She laughed softly when she said it, like it was sweet, like it was proof. And again, we brushed it off. We were all walking around on emotional tiptoe, and nobody wanted to be the one to say, "That's not comforting. That's terrifying." Then came the phone call. I'll never forget it, because it didn't feel like a story while it was happening. It felt like the air in the house changed permanently. My mom came stumbling out of her room, crying so hard she couldn't breathe right, like she'd been punched in the chest. She was hyperventilating, shaking, one hand pressed to her mouth like she was trying to keep something inside her from spilling out. We rushed to her, me, Mariana, my other sister Lucia, my dad, all talking at once. "What happened? Are you okay? What's wrong?" And she finally gasped out that the phone rang, and she answered. But nobody spoke. Just silence. Then she heard breathing. Slow, strained, wet sounding, like the person on the other end was fighting for air. And then the breathing shifted into this deep, rasping sound that made my stomach turn, because it sounded exactly like how my grandmother's breathing and voice had been described when she was close to dying. And then, my mom heard her voice, her real voice, calling her name. "Rosa, Rosa, Rosa," over and over. My mom said her whole body lit up with relief at first, like finally, after all these years, after all those lonely nights, her mother was really there. And I could see it in her face while she told us, this desperate, aching joy mixed with disbelief. But then she said the voice changed. It dropped lower, too low. The rhythm got wrong, like it wasn't speaking anymore. It was performing something. The warmth drained out of it, and it turned heavy, dark, almost guttural. And then it got loud. Not just loud like yelling, loud like something trying to push through the phone line, like it wanted to be in the room. And that's when my mom realized, in a flash of cold terror, that this wasn't her mother. Whatever it was had been wearing her mother's voice like a mask. She panicked, hung up, and ran out to us. And what broke me, even as a kid, wasn't just that she was scared. It was the heartbreak. Because you could see the moment she understood she'd been tricked. Like someone had offered her comfort with one hand and then pulled out a knife with the other. I've never seen a face hold grief and fear at the same time like that. It was raw. A week later, my sisters, who were not religious, not spiritual, not the type to do rituals, came home with a Bible and a bundle of something to burn. Not Palo Santo this time, some kind of cleansing herb they'd found at a botanica shop. It smelled sharp and earthy, and it smoked like crazy. They walked through every room reciting passages, half-remembered prayers, bits they looked up, things they'd heard from older renters. The smoke crawled along the ceiling and pooled in corners like fog. My dad stood there with this expression like, "I cannot believe this is my life." My mom barely participated. She was quiet, exhausted, almost ashamed. And me? I just watched. Too young to fully understand, old enough to feel that something was seriously wrong. The next night, after dinner, we were all in the living room watching some trashy reality show, something loud and stupid, the kind of thing you put on to drown out your own thoughts. It was winter. All the windows were shut. I remember that clearly because Lucia had made me get up earlier and check my bedroom window twice. Then we felt it. A rush of wind, right through the room, like someone had opened a door directly into our faces. We all turned at the same time, confused because nothing was open. And that's when we saw it. Not a person, not a shape like in movies, more like a smear of shadow, soft-edged, almost like smoke that refused to be smoke. It drifted from the dining area into the living room, fast, purposeful. It didn't hesitate. It moved like it knew exactly where it was going. It reached the back door, and the door swung open. Then, in the next instant, the gate at the end of the yard yanked open too, like it was nothing, like it weighed as much as a curtain. The shadow slipped out. And then the wind slammed everything shut, door first, then the gate, with this sharp, violent finality that made all of us flinch. Nobody spoke for a second. My sisters were shaking. My dad just stared like his brain couldn't file what he'd just seen. My mom looked pale, hollow, like she'd been proven right in the worst possible way. And me? I felt confused and weirdly fascinated, because at that age you don't have a category for it. You just know something impossible happened in your living room, and every adult you trust looks just as lost as you feel. It was only later, when I got older, that I understood the shape of it. Something had been in our house. Something had noticed my mother's grief and guilt and loneliness. And it used her mother's voice, the exact voice her cancer had stolen and twisted, to get close, to get invited in, to be given a chair, warmth, space. And every time I tell this story now, it hits me fresh at the end. We weren't living with a ghost story. We were living with something that lied to our faces, and we all saw it. Hey, so I'm usually the kind of person who talks myself down when something weird happens. Like, if I hear a random creak at night, I'm immediately like, okay, the house is settling. Maybe it's the pipes. Could be an animal outside. I'll take almost any logical explanation if it helps my brain relax, you know? But lately, I don't know. There's been this stuff happening that doesn't fit into any of my usual rational boxes. The biggest thing is these flashes of light. And I don't mean like headlights through a window or a bulb flickering. I mean a sudden, bright white flash. So quick it's almost like your eyes barely get time to register it, but it lights up the whole area for a split second. No sound, just this clean, silent burst. At first it was mostly at my apartment, and I tried to be reasonable about it. I told myself it had to be wiring, or a weird reflection, or maybe some motion light glitching somewhere. But then it started happening in places where that explanation didn't make sense. Like this one time. This was the most recent one that really shook me. I was in this little back room at my friend Maya's place. It's basically a storage space. No outlets nearby. No lamps. No windows positioned in a way that could have thrown a reflection. It was just dark. And then it happened. That same bright flash. For a second, I actually thought, did someone take a photo? Like someone was messing with me from outside, or a screen lit up, or something. I even checked around like an idiot, opened the door, looked through the hallway, checked my phone brightness, everything. And here's the part that messes with me the most. I had my camera recording. So I'm thinking, okay, if I caught it on video, perfect. That means there's a real source and I can figure it out. Except, the flash doesn't show up on the footage. At all. But right at the exact moment it happens, the video glitches. Static, like the whole image jitters and tears for a beat, and you can clearly see me react. Like I flinch and whip my head toward it. So it's not like I imagined it. My body responded. The camera freaked out. But the light itself? Just missing. And it's not even consistent in where it appears. It's not like, oh, it always comes from the kitchen, or it always comes from the same corner. It could be near a closet, or down a dark hallway, or from the weirdest dead space in a room that shouldn't have any light at all. And the worst part? it's not only at home. It's happened at friends' houses, at my cousin Jonah's place, even once when I was staying overnight somewhere else to get a change of scenery. It's like, if there's a dark area, it could happen there. And I keep trying to tell myself it's something normal, like a car passing outside, or a distant lightning flash, or some optical thing I don't understand. But it's always the same exact kind of flash, and it never records the way it should. Now, if it was only that, maybe I could still shrug it off. Maybe I could just go, okay, weird, I'll eventually figure it out. But it hasn't been only that. Other stuff has been stacking on top of it, and that's what's really getting to me. I've had a shirt get yanked and tossed across my room when I was alone. Like, not slide off a chair, not fall, actually move, like something grabbed it and threw it. I've had objects shift when I'm not touching them. Things fall for no reason. I've watched something tip over on a flat surface where it absolutely shouldn't have. And the sounds have been getting closer. Not like vague creaks from the attic or distant noises you can blame on neighbors. I mean close, like in the room next to mine, or right under the bed, or right at the foot of it. Actually, right after that flash at Maya's place, I came home feeling unsettled, like my skin was too tight on my body. I remember telling myself, don't spiral, just do something normal. So I went to my room, put on a video, tried to distract myself. And then I heard it. This guttural, wet gurgling sound right at the foot of my bed. It wasn't faint. It wasn't maybe. It was clear, vivid, like it was right there. The closest thing I can compare it to is, you know when you squeeze an empty plastic bottle and it makes that horrible gurgle pop sound as the air shifts? Like the bottle is collapsing and then sucking air back in? It sounded like that, but slower, heavier, more alive. And immediately my brain tried to fix it. Like, okay, plumbing, pipes, something in the bathroom. But the bathroom is too far, the windows were closed, and nothing else in the room could have made that sound. So I just sat there, holding my phone, barely breathing, waiting for it to happen again. Because sometimes if you hear something twice, your brain can place it. You can solve it. But it didn't repeat. It was just that one sound, perfectly timed to make my whole body go cold. And now I'm at this point where I don't know what to do with myself, because it's starting to change how I live. I'm scared to walk around my own place at night. I'm scared to turn the lights off. I'm scared to fall asleep, because sleeping is when things get even worse. I've always had nightmares. That's not new for me. Nightmares are so normal in my life that I'm used to them. Usually they're just dreams that happen to be dark, and I can wake myself up if I need to. And even when they're scary, they're not that deep, primal fear. They're just bad dreams. But the recent ones, they're different. They feel real in a way I can't explain, like I'm trapped in them, like I can't force myself awake. And the fear is pure, like the kind of fear that makes your chest hurt. And they're always some version of the same themes: shadowy figures, something watching me, someone not being themselves, people acting wrong, like possessed or empty. It's always that kind of vibe. And what's frustrating is, I'm not even someone who's into paranormal stuff. I'm not the burn sage person. I'm not the crystals and holy water person. I've never been the type to jump straight to ghosts. I've always felt like, sure, there are probably things we don't understand, but I'm not out here trying to make everything supernatural. I try really hard to stay grounded, to assess, to be logical. But when you have a flash of light that doesn't show up on camera, plus objects moving, plus the bed shifting, plus sounds that feel way too close, plus nightmares that suddenly turn into full-body terror, it starts to feel like your mind is losing its grip. And honestly, I think that's why I'm talking about it at all. I don't even know what I want. I think I want reassurance. Like, yeah, this can happen, and it has an explanation. Or even just someone saying, "You're not alone. I've had something like that, and here's how I dealt with it." Because right now, I'm stuck in this awful middle space where I don't want to believe it's something paranormal, but I also can't keep pretending it's nothing. So, if you've ever experienced anything like this, especially the flashes, how do you look at it without spiraling? How do you live normally when your own senses feel like they're betraying you? I'm just running out of places to put all of this.